good, get good and ready, for this track's heavy. Pixel Zero's on a roll, lady. Welcome to this channel of many. I hope you're ready to get mad, because that Fortnite game is sad. Before you get twisted, little brat, Micah did nothing wrong, how about that? Oh, hey, are you mad? Well, sorry, that's sad. If that stuff was good, I couldn't tell, oh well. How about not everything's about just you? Don't care for your opinion, get schooled. Playing soccer as a car is dumb fuel. There is more in life than the best shoes. Ketchup is disgusting goo. Q-dough is not Mexican food too. So sit back and enjoy. Garage Hell Scream is in command. Like and subscribe before I deploy, because I don't give a I am. Oh, hey, are you mad? Well, sorry, that's sad. If that stuff was good, I couldn't tell, oh well. For you that are gonna say Sigma, hey, bet you will die soon of late, ma. I want good games now, not that Roblox. That's all that's played by broccoli tops with brain rot. Hey, it's okay if you like it so much. Yeah, if you like it so much, why don't you marry it then? Yeah, why don't you marry it then? Oh, hey, are you mad? Well, sorry, that's sad. If that stuff was good, I couldn't tell, oh well. So sit back and enjoy. Garage Hell Scream is in command. Like and subscribe before I deploy. Now I won't get Pixel Zero, I am. So sit back and enjoy. Garage Hell Scream is in command. Like and subscribe before I deploy. Now I won't give Pixel Zero, I am. What about Micah? What about that time in Strawberry when he went off the deep end? Oh, forgot about that, never mind that.
Alright, hello everybody. Let's go ahead and get the stream up and running here. Good to see you all. Let's go ahead and start this off. Get the sound all checked in.
I must not fear.
Gotta see where my voice is compared to this. This is the first trailer.
Fear is the mind killer.
Announcement trailer, I believe. Let's see how well this is.
Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration.
Yeah, I think desktop audio can come up. That should be good right there.
I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing.
That should go straight into the next trailer that came out right after this one. So, this looks like sandworm riding. Okay, it's very similar to the opening scene of Conan Exiles, where he fights the... let me turn this down. Where he fights the sand beasts. And you can fight sand beasts in Conan Exiles. Now this is a developer studio that they said that they wanted to have some kind of mounted combat in the game, and they eventually put it in. It wasn't something they just left out forever. They did actually do it. So you can ride horses and the like around in Conan Exiles now, so you will eventually be able to ride sandworms in Dune.
Stop. If you are buying
Oh,
options,
geez.
you're
Okay.
wasting your time and money. Hi.
Hold on,
My
guys.
name is
Let me
Tom Hurd, and I've been
figure out
successfully
how to
trading using a counterintuitive...
skip. Get out of here.
I have a dream. It starts in the desert. You clean,
Hey, Jesus
you
Martinez.
find others.
Good to see ya.
You wander
Like you
the
some
dry,
Dune, do ya?
dirty
Me too.
streets of civilization. In the ancient halls of the testing stations, you find answers. You seek the secrets of the ever-shifting sands. Spice.
Let me know if there's some kind of weird echo going on my audio. Don't want... Alright, good. I think I have everything muted necessary. See what's going on here. There's a lot of gameplay
You do all
with
of
the
these
ornithopters.
things in my dream, Sleeper. I am terrified of what happens when you awaken.
I don't know if we're going to get to fly around ornithopters. That might be OP in a PvP scenario. So, if you do, I would expect there to be some kind of anti-air weaponry that's common, just to balance the PvP out. You might, because you can fly around with the demons and sorcery in Conan Exiles, so they'll probably just treat it the same way. Yeah. A little bit about me. I have more hours in Conan Exiles than I think most people on Steam. And probably half of the people if you combined all systems it was released on. I probably got...
Hello and
I own
welcome
both
to the
copies.
very first Dune Awakening Direct, a brand new series where we'll be taking a look at all things Dune Awakening from our studio here on Arrakis. On this episode, we'll be chatting to Joel Bylos. He's the Chief Creative Officer for Dune Awakening here at Funcom, and he will tell us
So we're
what
just gonna
players
watch all
can
these
look
interviews.
forward to this year, and he will share some news
This was the
about
first
our beta testing phase.
dev stream that he
Then
did.
we'll also be taking a look at the brand new gameplay trailer that we're just so excited to share
We'll
with you all.
get to the
But
new
first,
release
we'll
trailer.
look
It'll be at
what
the
it
end
takes to
of the
bring
live
most
stream, or near
dangerous
the end.
planet
And
in
then
the universe to life.
we'll
From
do a
book
little bit of character
to film
creation. We'll actually get
to
into the
video
game.
Let's get started with creating worlds.
Arrakis is this unrelenting anvil against which people are beaten and shaped and
Awesome.
forged into something that's stronger.
I'll say an
Very
awesome to you,
spiritual about
Jesus.
sand, which on the surface is really nothing, but underneath has a really diverse biological backstory.
So
One
they
of
were
my
heavily
favorite
inspired by the
lines
movie.
From Frank Herbert is, when you end a novel, it's like a train coming into the station that doesn't stop. You just
So
jam on the
they're
brakes
gonna
and let
try
the
and
sparks
ride
fly into people's
A
imagination.
release of the movie with the game, I'm sure. So I'm sure the release date lines up somewhere in there, and somewhere
Arrakis is a test,
when
is what the
people
Fremen say.
are
And the
purchasing
player
video
comes
games
right
a lot.
into the heart of that test.
It's kind of
Dune
close to
Awakening
both, I
is a
think is what they were
survival
going
game at the base
for.
level. And it begins like a traditional survival game, you know, like you're looking for water, you're looking for shelter. You know, where will you find water in the desert? Will you take it from others? So when we talk about survival, sure, we start with the basic kind of survive. And
Yeah,
then
and it
when you
will be a
survive
survival
long enough,
game.
It's now time to think about political survival and how you progress within the universe.
So they
The approach we
typically...
take when building a world like Arrakis is we kind of have to think about
I don't want to talk over
where
it too
are the
much.
stark lines
I
and how
guess
do we
I can
build these
pause it.
epic spaces? How do we make them feel huge and the player feels dwarfed by everything they see around them?
The intention was every time we saw the desert, it was highly brutal, and if you went out into the desert without the right protection and without the right knowledge, that it was sure death. If we looked at references from some of the hottest deserts in the world, the visuals that we saw from those deserts weren't enough. We needed...
And they
this
do a
world to
good
be
job.
harsher.
Conan
So we've been
Exiles
working with Legendary since
is
the very beginning.
at
They've
its
been
base
very
a
generous with
desert
sharing with us assets
game.
from the film
You're
and allowing
crucified
us
in
to
a
see
desert.
things
You have
from
to
the film
survive
and allowing us to
sandstorms.
really understand
So you're going to
the
probably
vision
have the same
Denis Villeneuve
sandstorm
has for the world
graphic
and his
even.
characters and the
It
way
might be a
he's
little better,
grounding
but
Arrakis. But of course, a game is a much larger
they did a really
scale.
good job with the desert
So we need to
areas.
expand
Conan.
upon that vision. We have our own army of concept
So
artists.
probably, I
who
would
send things
expect
back and forth
the
with
map to be
Legendary
very
all the time.
similar.
One of my
They're probably going
best
to
moments on this
reskin all the
project so
Conan
far,
stuff
actually,
off
was
of
I
it,
got to
use
go
desert areas,
and
make them the
visit
same, and then just put
the first
sandworms
film
everywhere else,
with a
I'm
group of
guessing.
the
Some people have been
from
inside
funcom, art
the beta and
directors, the
say that
lead
that's not the
artists.
case, though.
And we got to walk around in the actual sets that they had built in classic old school set building, massive palaces, and we got to look at the ornithopters from the inside and the outside, right? We got to walk around them and get a sense of their scale.
Well, I think what they had done really well is they'd been quite
thanks for the
inspired
subscribe.
by the world that we had built in Dune
Made
Part
the
1.
counter
On
go
a
up a
film,
little
you're sort of led on a journey by the director and by the script, whereas in a game you have the opportunity to sort of create your own narrative and create your own journey. The most exciting aspect for me is the fact that you can take what you've enjoyed and loved and you can build your own stories and your own places, and that to me is the ultimate goal, is to have, you know, complete control.
Using Unreal 5
So we can see a little bit of it here.
is obviously one of the better choices.
This
Unreal
definitely
5
looks
gives
like
us
he's just modifying
flexibility through
that
the
part
blueprinting
of
system. It allows us to
what
handle
that looked like to
amazing
me was the
graphics
part
through
by the
rendering
Noob River
system, the lighting system,
in
such as
Conan
Lumen.
Exiles
Lumen technology
with
allows
the
proper
grass
light
and
bouncing.
trees skinned
If
off
I had
of
to
it.
say one thing in the game that really benefits from Lumen, it's
So I'm pretty sure that's what
player-crafted
they're doing.
spaces. In our case, it's like you build a room and you place a window, and the window lets in natural light, and the light will fill the room in a way that
Now, that
feels
can be one of two
real.
things.
And that technology hasn't
They're
existed
using
before.
B-roll
Before Unreal 5,
from
in the olden days, you had to use what we called the LOD system.
programmers
And that
working
meant
on
that you had to
Conan
create
Exiles
assets at
and
different
not
LOD
Dune.
levels, so it doesn't slow
Or
down
they're
every
actually
computer.
working on
With
Dune.
Unreal 5, we have this new technology called nanite that breaks things down.
Now, this
into
is
the
a-
right amount of
this is a
polygons at
little
the right
different, but you
distance.
see-
So for us,
Yeah,
as a
okay,
company,
so
this
they
has
have
made
that
an amazing
same
difference to the visual detail
curve
of the
to
world.
that like
It
pillar
allows us to
structure that you
create
saw
one
there.
really amazing
That's a
looking
Conan
cliff
Exiles
feature. And then
artifact
doesn't
that's
matter how
been
far away or
just
how
sort
close we
of
place it, it performs
reskinned
well, and, it looks
and molded
great.
slightly different, but the main shape and detail of it is
Where
there.
Unreal worked for us on Dune,
Which this is
was
going to be
that
cool
it
for you guys. I don't
was
want you to
a
think that it's going to be
fantastic
recycled
pre-production and
assets.
planning tool.
What they're doing
On
is they're
Dune Part
taking
2, we had some
already
very
detailed
complicated
assets
scenes,
and
we were
then
able to previs
paying people to put
all the
even
way
more
from
detail on them.
Budapest
So they're going to be
what
extra
the light
crazy.
was going to be doing well in advance. It's the only tool that I've used, I would say, in my 25 years of shooting.
So I think that's
that
pretty cool.
is
It's going to have this
able
like
to
sort
be
of
used
layered
across a
look to it, I
wide
think.
spectrum of films by different types of filmmakers.
The most iconic creature in the Dune universe is the sandworm of Arrakis. And so we've tried to represent this in the game in multiple ways. So as a player, your first steps on the open sand, you hear the hiss.
I should have
of the
paused
sand
it on
in the
that. I'll
distance
pause it next
as the
time they pull up
sandworm
some
begins
kind
to
of
move
like
towards you.
dev
And when it gets close,
over
you
the
hear
shoulder
roar
editing.
as it erupts from the sand nearby. And at that point, you have only seconds to live if you cannot make it to rocky ground. So this is your first experience with sandworms, and these are the little ones. When you go into the deep desert, when you're harvesting spice, the giant ring-mouth sandworms that we've seen in the film will erupt underneath the spice blows and suck harvesters and equipment down into the
I hope the
sand beneath them.
soundtrack for this doesn't
There's
get me
really
in
only
trouble
one
though.
rule. The sandworm will
I'm sure they
always
bought the rights
come.
to it, but I'm not sure that really exists for me. I know there's other
Humans have
streamers
always
that have
had this
restreamed it as
innate
well,
drive
so
to create
should be
something,
okay.
to build worlds, whether it's in their head, whether it's in text, whether it's on screens, whether it's in games. Funcom as a company has been on this journey for a long time, creating multiplayer worlds where players can live out their dreams and fantasies. We were there in the beginning with massively multiplayer online games. We've been there in the beginning with survival open world crafting games. And Dune
Yeah, and
is a
Conan
culmination
Exiles
of
was
those
not
legacies,
expected
bringing us forward
do as
into
well
the
as it
future. It's
did.
the culmination of
They-
what Funcom means as a
They
company and what we
killed
can
it
deliver.
when they made
And
that
this
game.
legacy means
It's
that
fairly
we need
glitchy,
to
but
really pay attention to what we're creating and how we create it for the fans, because I think at the heart of this,
killed it being
there's
like
a
a
lot of
good
people out
thing.
there who really want to live in the universe that Frank Herbert created, and they really want to live in the visual world of the film.
We'll get to the juicy stuff later on in stream, guys.
And so we need to create the gap between those two possibility spaces and create a game world where people can live out their fantasies that they've taken from Dune. And yes, it's a huge legacy, and it feels at times extremely overwhelming, but we really hope that we can deliver something for everybody.
Oh, they're gonna kill it. They're gonna do a good job. The only way that this gets messed up
Wow, that was
is if
great.
there's
Creating
crazy
captivating visuals
microtransactions.
on the big screen.
They've
and
actually
the immersive
backtracked
world of
the
games, of course,
microtransactions
both certainly
in
come with
Conan
their own
Exiles,
unique set of
so I'd
challenges,
expect
and
that
I
not
think
to
it's very
be
clear
out of
that
hand
both
at
mediums
least.
draw deeply
'Cause they
from the
did have a
seminal
battle
book that
pass,
started
and then they
it all.
scrapped
Now,
the
of course,
battle pass.
Villeneuve's movies have mesmerized the audiences with their
So,
adaptation of Frank Herbert's
that'll be okay,
masterpiece.
I think.
It's been showcasing the intricate politics, the very stunning visuals, and the harsh desert of Arrakis. And now, as we venture into the game, the challenges of bringing this rich universe to life really
I'm not
takes
against
on
battle
new
passes
forms.
either. I'm just
So,
against
here to share
games
this
that
exciting
make
process with us is
you
Joe Biles,
take the
the
battle
Chief Creative
pass.
Officer for Dune Awakening.
That wasn't
Joe, welcome to
that
the
wasn't the
first ever
case
show.
in Conan.
Thank you very much for having me.
To be
Excited
clear.
be here.
I am
was-
so
it was
excited
Kid
that you're
Gloves
here
Battle
because I get
Pass
to
is what it
pick your
was.
brain. I have so many questions, and I want to dive straight into this. Dune Awakening is a survival MMO. Two words everyone watching will be familiar with, but what's your take on that? What is a survival MMO?
Sure. So survival games are obviously a genre of games about like building yourself up from the bottom and surviving. MMOs are more about social interaction and you know how players work together to achieve big goals. And we thought, why not combine the two? You know, why don't we create a game? Because most of the survival games that are out there, they kind of
Well, they did that with Conan.
Once you get to a certain point of survival,
It's a 40-slot server for
you've
official
gotten to.
servers.
But what we thought
But
was like
enough
the universe
people
of Dune is a
exchange
perfect place
out, so
with these
the same
politics and this
people
intrigue and there's machinations
aren't
that
there
happen.
all the
So
time. So when somebody's
let's get players
offline,
hooked on
other
the
people are
survival and
online.
bring
So
them
you
into
eventually
the
have
political
like
survival
500
of the
to
Dune
1,000
universe.
people
Let's break it down then and dive a
chaining
little
out
deeper,
spots on a
starting with the
40
survival
slot
part.
server.
What are we surviving
So
on Arrakis? Well,
it
what's out
feels
there?
like
I mean,
there's more
worms?
than there
Players?
is slots for.
What else?
Other players.
I
So
was
the player-
apprehensive
I mean,
about it at first.
Obviously, Arrakis is all about the heat.
But they're
and the water.
literally calling it
So
an
the player,
MMO.
First of all, needs to be
So I'm
searching for
thinking
water.
they're
They
going
need
to
stay out
go
of
with
the sun,
new
stay
server
black
tech
shade
that doesn't
during
have
the
slots.
daytime,
Kind of
travel
like
by
what
night.
World of
Take a
Warcraft
look at
does.
That's what the
That would
Fremen
be
say, right? That's
amazing.
what the,
That'd be
the
crazy
Kitam Al
and
Gaib
amazing.
says it in the book, right? Black
Well, I'm not
black
gonna hold
shade
out that
by
much
day,
hope.
travel by night. So the player needs to worry about these things, think about the sunlight, think about where they are, but they also need water because that runs out really quickly without a still suit and you die very fast. So yeah, there's lots of ways in which to get water. You can explore dew fields and eat plant fiber to try and get water out of it. After a while, you start to throw up because you can't really get too much water out of plants that way. And then the way I prefer to do it is to shoot enemies, take their blood, drink that.
You just casually dropped that right there.
Drink their blood.
So we're harvesting
I'm
blood,
playing Bene Gesserit,
or
by the
just
way.
lick some plants, whichever way you choose. You're going to stay hydrated, which is very important.
Yes.
Yeah, stay hydrated at home, in and out of game. Are there other resources I need to worry about?
Yeah, so as a player, I mean, it's a proper survival open world crafting game, right? So players will craft their entire arsenal, right? So they'll be collecting resources, they'll be collecting stone, they'll be collecting metals like copper, iron, eventually forging steel, building up the equipment that they have at home. So they'll be crafting, all their weapons, all of their gear, all of their clothing, and they can of course craft themselves a base to live in, craft machines to help them craft bigger machines, which allow them to craft better weapons and so forth.
All right, so there's a lot to do.
It's by
is
far
what I'm
my
hearing. Base
favorite
building, you
part
just
of
mentioned, that's
funcom
obviously very
games.
exciting. I saw
At least
you
the
guys
games
shared a
like
sneak
this
peek
is
of
being
what a
built
base
off
could look
of.
like,
I'll say it a
already
million
on your
times during
TikTok
stream.
channel. Very cozy.
During the
Why
stream.
would I ever
Conan
leave
Exiles
home like that and
with the crafting system.
head out into the
I can get
desert?
into that
But
if
I'm
people
sure you
want to
guys
see
give
it
us
in the
plenty of
chat.
reasons to do just
Hey,
that.
Dylan, welcome
Is there
back.
anything special about the base building in this game?
Yeah, so we took what we started with in Conan Exiles, our other survival game. We brought that over. Then we started to add to it, right? So we've now created a system for co-op building where you can place out holograms and other players can fill them in. So you work with your friends to build bases. You can also save your base as like an architectural blueprint that you can then sell to other players on the exchange, or you can give to your friends. So they, if you make something really cool. One of the things we saw in Conan Exiles that I really liked was that players were building
he's saying it
the
too.
Taj Mahal. They were just building really cool buildings. And it's like, what if you could sell that to another player? That'd be cool, right? So another player might want to be able to just buy that blueprint off you and then place that out in the world and build it themselves.
See, this is dumb. I'd rather they didn't spend their time
system works, allowing it to be very
on
That's
carrying
incredible.
blueprints around.
I absolutely love
It,
that.
it
Well, I
worries
know
me
my
a little
story arc
bit.
is gonna be
As
architect.
a player of their
harvest lots
games, when they try
occasionally, but,
altering their
what you
systems
gonna
like
do?
this, it tends to
now
get
that
very
I have my basic
glitchy.
needs all met, I'm staying
There's
hydrated.
currently a problem in
some
Conan
uncrucial
Exiles
ways, and
where
I'm
you'll
having my
randomly
base.
fall
How
through
do
the
I protect
foundations of your
myself
base.
and my base from the world? Like, what am I doing for
And
combat?
to my
So the game
knowledge,
has
it's not
has a
really
full
been
leveling system,
completely
right?
fixed.
And we do this thing we call
So,
combined arms, which is like
They're using the exact
have
same
melee,
system.
we have ranged,
here.
and we have abilities.
Now, I guess
and we
they're
also have
just going to
vehicles,
try and get it
So
right, but
players can use any
I
combination
don't know.
of these in
It
combat,
seems
right?
more
So it's
logical
kind
to
of
me to
creates
just
this
put the
interesting
same
dynamic.
building
so you
system
can learn
in
abilities from the great schools of the
and
universe and learn how
fix
to be
it
a
to
Bene
where there's
Gesserit,
no bugs,
compelling your enemies to come close to
rather
you so
than
that you can
put
stab
new
them with a
aspects
knife.
of the building
And
system
you
in.
combine your, so you're combining melee with abilities there, right? Or you
Just
can be
a
a sword
thought, because
master
then
and
you're
leap in with a
improving
knee
both
charge,
games,
knocking
right?
people to the ground and then stabbing them. Or you can choose to be like a trooper and you use your Shigawai reel to pull you up like a grappling hook, to pull you to high places where you can shoot down on your enemies with sniper rifles and shotguns. So there's a large variety of weapons that you can craft through our intricate crafting system.
Okay, so
In
you're more
addition
like
to
a
these abilities
sniper
that you learn as
if
you
you
level up
pick
your
that.
character.
I
So you
did
kind
see
of
that
have
on the
this
character
freedom
creator,
of
which we'll
choice,
take
and
a
that's
look
really
at
what combined
near the end of
arms is all
stream.
about. It's sandbox combat. That's what we're trying to call it and what we're going for, right?
Are those hard locked in classes, or is there like a? Can I explore different skill trees? Like,
Yes.
can I be a swordsman or a swordsmaster and also use the voice? Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible. You just have to find the right trainer in the world who'll teach you these things. So you choose in character creation, you make a choice of who was your mentor when you were young. And then you choose one of the things, and that determines your set of starting abilities. But then when you play the game, you find trainers in the world. You have to do things for them, but then they'll eventually teach you some of the way, the path that can take you
in
down some of
Conan,
these
this
skills
was
and
as
abilities,
simple
yeah.
as
I love
walking
that.
up to them
Okay, so
and asking
lots
them
of
to do
things
it.
to explore
So,
there as a player.
I wouldn't
and,
expect too
and
much.
avenues to take, all in order to protect myself.
Although they're very hidden and
and
cryptic.
maybe my friends if
Their games
I feel like
typically
it.
are not on
What am I
Wikipedias to where you can tell
protecting?
where to
Like,
go
how do I
and what to
protect
do
myself against
to get a
sandworms?
certain
Like,
thing to
can
happen.
I
You just
fight
have to
them?
figure
Can
it
I
out
bite
yourself.
them? Like, what's the deal
Don't
with them?
expect
Sandworms
Wowhead
are
or something like that to
are
save
like a
you here.
tension mechanic in the game. We want you to
Okay.
be really worried every time you walk on the sand. So you really need to think about what you're doing. So there is no way to kill or defeat sandworms. The
No,
only thing
I
you can
cannot.
do, you just cannot. The only thing you can do is avoid the sandworms, right? So you craft yourself a thumper and place it out to distract a sandworm. Maybe you use it to lure a sandworm onto some friends of yours or some enemies,
Friends,
depending on how
as
you
one
feel.
does.
And the other thing you can do, of course, is craft yourself a vehicle. Like we have a range of vehicles in the game, including the iconic ornithopters, and players will be able to craft these, and you'll be able to use these to, of course, traverse.
Yeah,
safely,
I'm
right?
absolutely
If you're in an
playing this when it
ornithopter,
comes out.
you
We're
fly
playing the
above.
heck out of
If you're on a
this.
sand bike or something like that, you can move quickly across the sand. Hopefully, a sandworm won't get you if you time it right.
We'll get
Hopefully.
all the
That's
followers on
okay. I love,
Rumble,
constant
all the
zooming
subscribers
effect
on
sounds really
YouTube. We'll
stressful,
make a bunch of
sounds perfect,
we'll make a big old
actually, for a
clan.
survival MMO. Now you already alluded to some of the cooperative things one can
Can't do hard Conan,
in-game.
though.
Can you
That's against
elaborate
my-
a little bit more here, or dive
my
deeper
A-type
into this? Like,
personality, I guess.
Can I fully go on a journey with someone and like do tasks with each other? Like, what can I do with other people?
Yeah, so I mean, hook up with your friends, join together with a grouping system. We have a ping system, so you can, obviously point out things to players. You will find different roles that you can assume based on the kind of combination of abilities you want to bring with you. And then you can heal your friends, of course, get them up when they get knocked down in combat, things like that. And then, of course, you go on journeys like we have a system called the journey system. You can go on those journeys together and sort of explore the mystique of the universe. Through that, we also have a contract system.
Trying to get
when
the
you go to
green screen
trade
to
posts,
work.
you'll be able to take contracts. Your friend and you can go out and explore and do these contracts together. We have small group play, we have guild play. It's all kind of what you'd expect to see in a social experience.
What's your take on the politics? Because obviously the books and the movies, that's a big part of it, like the whole political intrigue. How predominant is that in the game?
I mean, we want players to be able to dip into it. So you start the game kind of lost in the desert, right? And then by the end of the game, maybe you're the next Baron Harkonnen. So as you play through the game,
who doesn't want to be him?
He's a good-looking.
Yeah, so what he's saying is it's part of the end game, so they're gonna release the game without it.
You sort of,
This is gonna get added in later.
In the world, right? The Atreides and the Harkonnen.
Allow me to
There's war of
translate.
assassins going on, as it's called.
But they do end up
as a
adding
player,
in. They
you
keep to their word pretty
which side
good.
you want to help, which side you want to join.
Funcom does about
Then
this particular
start to
studio of
partake
devs.
in missions for those factions, And eventually, yeah, you work your
They're
way
like
up through
their
the ranks
golden
of the
goose at the
factions, and
moment.
maybe you take on a position of power as well. So the politics are, you know, they're designed to actually encourage players to develop their own politics around the sandbox systems, right? So we have this Landsrad. The Landsrad will demand that players do certain things. The factions need to work together or against each other to achieve these goals, right? So there's also this sandbox element to the politics.
Which also then encourages like co-op play or PvP play.
Feel free to ask
Co-op
any
play or
questions in
PvP
chat
play,
there,
yeah.
guys. If
Yeah,
you
there's
got,
this
you got a
this
concern
kind of
about the
idea
game.
that, yeah, like when people have the same objective, but they're on opposite sides, it becomes a race between them to achieve that objective, and they'll do all sorts of dirty things to get to the top, right?
Sounds about right. Can I opt out of politics? Can I just live my peaceful little Swiss life in my cottage?
can-
Absolutely. You can play however you want. I mean,
Well,
the
I don't
idea
know
is
how much
do
you want to do
sandbox
that,
and
but
allow people to
it's a
approach it how they
theoretical
like.
possibility
We have one of the rules of
to build a
one of the
glitch
rules of the
base
game
in
is expression
Conan
and
to
customization.
get a dev to show
and
up
that's not
to
just about visuals.
then
it's
start asking
customizing how you
questions
want to play
about
the
it.
game. So it's really thinking
Well,
about,
we're not gonna do that.
like
I'm gonna
to
get my
craft
account
and
banned.
just set up my little crafting setup and sell things on the exchange to other players. So you can do that. You can basically live your life as a crafter. You can also be an architect, as we talked about. You know, you can be a pilot, a scout. You're not really heavily involved in the fighting, but you go out and you craft maps that you sell to other players as well of the
It
world.
wouldn't be real time. They'd email me
Where
later.
are we currently at? Like, I know there've been betas already. How many more of
With my
those
suspension
coming? What's the
details.
next one? What's the status of development? Where are we at?
So yeah, we've been running betas now for several months. They've been going really well. We're slowly inviting more people over time. So the game, yeah,
I'm not
we're
in
not
the
going to
beta.
rush it out the door. We're going to work with our
I could probably
community
get
and
in
our
the beta,
players,
but
and
then
we're
I
going
wouldn't
to
be able
try
to
and make
show
the game
anything
as good as it possibly can
or
be.
talk
Takes
about
as
the
long as
game
it
like
takes.
this.
It takes
So
as long as
that's
it takes.
why
You
I'm
gotta
not in
do
the
it
beta
well.
yet.
So yeah, so we're working with our community, and yeah, betas are continuing right all the way through launch, and we're
So
going to
right
keep
now, if I
increasing
get
the number
leaked
of people in those
footage,
betas,
I can show that.
helping us stress test.
If I join
yelling
the
at us
beta,
'cause they
I
get
will
eaten by
not be
sandworms,
able to
all
show
those
any
kind
of
of
that.
good things.
All the good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, have there been any like recent milestones you're particularly excited about, or anything you want to share about the current development?
Sure. There's a thing as a creative director I like to say that we get a few aces every time we make a project. We get to make a few creative bets. There's a thing called the shifting sands, which is one of my most exciting. One of the things that makes me most excited about the game, and that is this location in the world. It's a full PvP area, and every week the Coriolis storm sweeps in and completely alters the landscape of this area. And I got to see that working for the first time very recently with full landscape changing and people able to play, and it's exciting to see these things coming
That's
online.
gonna be
And I
really
think it's
cool.
something
A
people haven't
giant
seen before.
gripe
So I'm excited
from
to
me and my
let
friends
the audience in on it. You know?
is
I
that
can't wait to be part of that
PvP
audience,
map,
and I also can't
or
wait to
just
give
the
more
map in
opportunities
general,
in the future to chat about the development
needs to
and
be
the process
randomized
that
every
you
so
and the
often,
team are going
at
through.
least
Now, any
per
last
server.
words? Anything you want to say to
I'm not sure about
your
this week
future player
thing,
base?
but I think on at least every server
thank
it should
you
be different.
everybody for joining us on this journey. I hope today's show was like your first taste of spice.
So I think they kind of heard us when
Mildly
we were talking
euphoric,
to them about it a
slightly
while back,
addictive,
and this is
and
sort
leaving
of
you
their
wanting more.
compromise.
I certainly want more of
'Cause
that
I've been-
now. I'm pretty
I've been
sure
around these
everyone
guys for a
watching
long
as well,
time.
so remember, for a chance to get an invitation to any of the future closed beta tests, head on over to duneawakening.com and sign up for the beta. Then head on over to Steam and wishlist the game. You can also join our Discord and follow our other socials at Dune Awakening. Also, of course, you can keep up to date on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where we will be showcasing regular sneak peeks into the world of Dune Awakening. Now,
Not real sure how a
here's a
sniper
moment
rifle
that
would
I'm
work
pretty
in
sure
Dune, though,
everyone has
'cause
been
the
waiting
personal
for. Let's
shields.
take a look at
I
our
believe the
brand
lore
new
on that is
gameplay
there used to
trailer
be
for
sniper
Dune
rifles of
Awakening.
laser weapons, but since they would create a miniature nuclear explosion anytime they hit a personal shield, they just kill obviously the sniper as well as the shield person. They just don't use them anymore. But maybe it snipes down one of those little bees that flies around that then stabs you with some poison, and you die that way. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe it's a little too loud. Okay. That's that little bee thing going in and stabbing the guy in the neck. I guess the snipers, the troopers, will have that weapon, and they'll use that. Oh, that's way too early. Sorry. It's a long video. My bad, Shelfie.
Arrakis is a test. Few survive it. But the humans that do awaken.
Very cool. Okay, so this should go to the next video soon. I'm gonna help it out.
Hi, I'm Joe Delaney. Today we're going to talk about what's the fastest way.
We don't need to listen to that guy.
Arrakis is a test.
I wonder if this is the same trailer we just saw.
Survive it.
Well, it's much appreciated, Shelfie. Thank you. Yeah, this is the same trailer. We're gonna go ahead and skip that. GG, good to see ya. This is Dune Awakening.
Hello and welcome back to Dune Awakening Direct, our series where we discuss all things Dune Awakening. So thank you so much for joining us back here on Arrakis.
Alright, you know what? I'm turning the subtitles off.
A look at a trailer that we unveiled just recently at Summer Game Fest. Then we will welcome back Joel Bylos, the creative director for Dune Awakening.
Seen somebody play it already?
Dive into the history and talk about the spark that is
I thought about grabbing somebody else's gameplay, but I got a little bit of my own that we're gonna do on the stream. So I downloaded part of a demo of the game, and we can get into it a little bit. We can't walk around though, unfortunately, but we'll do the character creation. We'll be able to see all that.
And the decisions you will have to make before you embark on your journey. Then finally, we'll close out this episode with Joel, who's going to shed some light on what makes Dune Awakening an MMO and what sets it apart from survival games you may have played before. So let's kick things off with our new story cinematic.
The only peace I find is a future that never happened. One where I, Paul Atreides, was never born. I created the future.
I think I have the exclusive gameplay footage of that.
But I see a narrow way, a path that might have been.
We'll see some of that.
My mother had obeyed her orders and given birth to a girl. Everything would change. Dr. Yue exposed before his betrayal. A world where my father lives. House Atreides surviving the Battle of Arrakeen. Sardaukar deployed to protect the spice melange. A war of assassins spreading across the planet. Fremen exterminated.
Oh, that explains it.
Muad'Dib. No Lisan al-Gaib. No Kwisatz Haderach. All of my visions lead to horror. Except for this one. This one leads to you.
So it is an alternate timeline. And that explains, I was wondering why there's no Fremen in the character creation. And that's because they were killed, I guess. The game I should play is
now I have the utmost
Inscription,
pleasure
huh?
of welcoming back
I'll take a look.
Joel for a quick chat. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you very much for inviting me back.
Of course. Obviously, Paul does not exist in this alternate timeline, or rather alternate history. That is huge. Please walk us through the thought process of that.
Sure. So when we started working on the game, we knew that we wanted to have different factions. We wanted to have it set on Arrakis. And Paul, as a character, casts a shadow over everything that happens there. He's such an important figure to the universe. And we were looking for, like, how can we bring players in, make them feel like they have some agency in this world and they're not just going to join Paul. And so we looked in the timeline, we worked with our partners, the Herbert Estate and Legendary, and we found, like, a moment where Jessica made a choice about the child she was going to give birth to.
It's okay if a game has cuss words in it, by the way. I'll still play it. I'll just put a little disclaimer on the stream. Because as a father, I don't mind that the game has cuss words, as long as it's not built around it like the South Park games are, for example, to let my kids watch. I just don't do any of the cussing. So that's good enough for me as a parent, so I don't mind.
But then because of the events that Jessica chose, she is now more tied to the Bene Gesserit faction, and they have trained her as a truthsayer, and she has the recognition of Yue's betrayal before it happens. And that leads to the Atreides being prepared for the Battle of Arrakeen, which means that they manage to defend themselves, which means that they don't get wiped out. And that leads to these major factions being in conflict on the planet of Arrakis.
Let's talk about Lady Jessica's decision then, which, you know, started the whole thing here. Obviously, with her complying to the Bene Gesserit rule of having a daughter, why did she even make that decision in the first place?
Well, she's always been torn in her loyalties, right? She came to the Duke, and she fell in love with the Duke.
GG, I got to ban the last part of that, apparently.
In her mind, right? And then there's the other side of course, that the Duke never made her his wife, and she has to make a decision. And of course, in the book, she made the Paul decision. In our game, she made the Aristay decision. And that, you know, that I think that people are very complex, and she had these, you know, these very complex ideas going on. And so, torn in her loyalties, in this case, she chose the Bene Gesserit.
So let's talk about Aristay's, you know, part of the story then. Is she taking up Paul's mantle, or is she just a completely different? I mean, she is a completely different person. What's her agenda? What's her spiel?
I mean, Aristay has her own path to walk, right? And the path of the Lisan al-Gaib and the Kwisatz Haderach is not available to her, and it doesn't happen, you know, because events don't play out the same way. She doesn't end up in a situation where she has to face any of that. So she is a precocious girl. She grew up with the Bene Gesserit training that her mother would have given to Paul, the Mentat training that Thufir would have given to Paul. Right, she has sword masters like Duncan Idaho training her, and the great troubadour Gurney Halleck teaching her. So she has a lot of the same abilities and trainers as Paul, but she finds herself in a very different situation in the world because, of course, the end goal of the Bene Gesserit here is that the daughter of House Atreides marries the heir of House Harkonnen in order to create their Kwisatz Haderach.
Do hate that for her, I'm not gonna lie.
So Aristay ends up under a completely different set of pressures, right? And that leads to a very different sort of life for her.
So I think they got the lore on this completely wrong. The Bene Gesserits hate Harkonnens. They look at Harkonnens as animals, not worthy of life. So they treat them as slaves. There's no way that they would even dirty themselves by having the name of one of their order marry any of them in any form, even if they led the whole thing.
As long as they're there. But he
It's
also
just a
says
respect issue.
that, spice still has to flow freely. So he sends the Sardaukar to police the spice harvesting operations and make sure that spice
PFD,
still flows
huh?
out of Arrakis and into the Imperium because it's
What's
such
that
an
again?
important resource.
So, looking at Arrakis, in the trailer it does say at the very end, you know, the Fremen being they're gone essentially. Are they gone, or are we like figuring out where they went? Where are we at?
I think that's the central mystery of the entire game, right? The Fremen are missing.
Oh, right on.
Imperium propaganda would say that they've been exterminated, but we have our doubts. So as a player, a part of the core story that you'll be following as a player is find the Fremen. And as you play through the world, you walk in the footsteps, you find the places where the Fremen once were, you explore their rites, you explore their culture, but where are the Fremen? And can you one day find them? I'm not going to answer that question, but that's part of what the story is all about.
But their cultural impact is still very much felt as I'm traversing through Arrakis.
Both their impact, like both the remnants of what they left behind when they left the abandoned Sietches and things like that, but also the vacuum of power, right? Because the Fremen that was their territory, and they were extremely fierce about defending.
Oh, go back slightly. Nope. Right. Oh, come on. Right there. That looks like part of the Redstone dungeon, if I remember correctly. I could be completely wrong, actually. It's been a while since I've gone to get some redstone. Alright, onward.
It was their territory, and they were extremely fierce about defending it. And with them not in the area, other people
That's right,
started to
GG.
fill in the gaps.
Light levels are a thing. I can't have the light reflecting
about
off.
The impacted story and narrative path though on Dune Awakening, because it is a survival MMO. If we're looking at the survival part, usually the extent of story in a survival game is, oh no, your plane crashed. Oh no, you're shipwrecked. Oh no, it's an apocalypse. Figure it out. Clearly, that is not the case for Dune Awakening. There is a lot of story to be explored for the players.
Absolutely, I think like we want to give players a clear journey to follow in the game, right? So they can explore the world, and they have this backbone story thread that they're following through as well. If they're interested, if they're not interested, they don't have to care that much about it, right? It's there, but you follow a fairly in-depth story, and it's kind of always plans within plans, you know, so you're always having to think about what people actually want and what the motivation is. Like, why are you looking for the Fremen? Is it a really important question that you should probably ask yourself as a player? Like, what exactly have you been sent to do this for? And I think these kind of elements provide a little more motivation for players as they explore the world.
I do love that. What are your thoughts here generally? I mean, obviously by creating an alternate history and timeline, lots of different moving pieces, can we still expect to see similar
The
things?
Discord server is in the information,
Absolutely, I think that
the about section for my YouTube channel with all my links. It says it'll have my Rumble subscribe, my follower referral for Rumble, and then below that somewhere will be the Discord link.
maybe would have died in the books due to certain events. They're present in the game. You'll also encounter factions trying to achieve goals, but in a slightly different way because they don't have to account for the Paul element, right? So for players, it's great because I think Dune fans should get a kick out of exploring the way that the thought experiment of like, okay, if Paul's not here, what is here, and what are people trying to do, right? And I think that kind of leads to very interesting consequences as you play.
Yeah, I love the far-reaching consequences that has into the future of the game as well. We talked last time already about, you know, respecting the source material, which there is so much to draw from with the books and the movies. How do you make sure when you're creating an alternate history, that's a big step. How do you make sure that you're not veering too far away from that source material?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of like taking the source material as always the starting point, like being able to extrapolate out in ways that are like as logical as possible, and being able to say, look, I started here at point A, And my conclusion is, yes, I'm here at point B, and because of the old history, this makes a lot of sense as a logical conclusion. So we start there. Then, of course, we have like our partners at Legendary and the Herbert Estate who can keep us grounded and keep us in line with what we should be doing, right? So we run a lot of our stuff by them for fact-checking. Like, we have this ridiculously long timeline document that we've written, and I think it's like 10,000 words of just timeline. And then we've shared that to get it approved by the Herbert Estate and things like that. So we do our research, and we always start with the source material.
And I mean, I think it's pretty clear from everything you've said, from everything we got to see thus far, that there's a lot of love and respect for the Herbert's writing, for the source material we're also seeing from the movie. So I know for sure that the game is in very good hands with you guys, Joe.
Thank you. I mean, I will say the one thing that we try to do is just make sure that we preserve the legacy. And part of the reason for doing an alternate timeline is that we don't want to step on what's been created that's amazing. We want to do the sideways thing and not actually ruin any of the canon over there.
And it's honestly so smart, because in doing so, you now opened up this whole new alternate timeline for everyone. And now let's actually hand it over to Leia for a look at how this alternate Arrakis is still just as steeped in spirituality for all of our players to explore.
Oh. I saw some over-the-shoulder devness. Right there. Enhance. This looks like skill trees. Let's go ahead and go forward a little bit more. That could just be node-based programming. So, that's kind of hard to say.
In Dune, Paul uses the Fremen prophecy of the Messiah as a tool for survival, right? He sees the path ahead, he sees the consequences of this decision, but he
well, this is a narrative designer. No, that was just some kind of story web.
The path leads to chaos and to the end of his family's legacy. Your story is also one of survival, but you are not Paul Atreides, and you'll have to embrace the chaos instead of avoiding it. As a part of the story of Dune Awakening, you will have the opportunity to explore and experience the religious and spiritual journeys of many of the people you will come across. Our Arrakis is still the harsh, unforgiving planet created to train the faithful, but Jessica's decision to bear a daughter, Ariste, instead of Paul, has created an entirely different political environment for you to navigate.
Welcome back, TG.
You will have to evolve in a world in turmoil, a world with no clear dominant force that is embroiled in a long and exhausting war of assassins. This power vacuum is breeding instability, but also opportunity for many, including you, the player. Arrakis is a crucible from which many factions and groups and sects have splintered and spread and festered, each with its own set of beliefs and waging a war against each other, fighting for their own little patch of desert. Like, for example, the Masquerade, who are a cult of religious fanatics who have copied and twisted even the Fremen way of life. As a player, you may not be the Messiah, but the spice will still guide you in your journey. You will have to learn the ways of the desert by following the teachings left by the Fremen and undergo the mystical trials of Akal. Because for the Fremen, learning to survive Arrakis is already in itself a spiritual awakening, a spiritual journey. Villeneuve's movies have shown us the danger of taking up the mantle of a spiritual leader. They have shown us the power that comes from it, but also the damage it can cause. This story, however, has already been told. Yours has yet to be written.
Well, okay. I like the idea of there being other factions in there, just to serve as sort of NPC raider camps. That'll be interesting. But I really don't think whoever made them respect the lore did a great job of having them do that with Ariste's character.
Now we know a little bit about the story of Dune Awakening's Arrakis, let's look at how our journey begins with Niels, producer on our creative team.
So that was a little bit of the gameplay that we'll be showing.
Hello, my name is Niels Reborg, and I'm a producer here at the creative team at Funcom. Today I'll be walking you through the first moments of Dune Awakening, character creation, where we find out who you are and what you look like. Let's take a look.
Well, we're gonna skip
Here
this
we
part
have
because we're gonna do that. We're not gonna worry about any of that. Here we go.
Now, before we move on to another topic, is there anything you can share, Joel, about the state of development for the game?
Sure. So we've recently opened what we call persistent beta. And what that means is that we're leaving it up 24/7. We have lots of players in there who are testing the game from start to finish, which means that they start in the desert and that they're hopefully passing through the faction system, choosing their sides, and then eventually reaching the end game where that's helping us to test like the deep desert where, you know, people will be harvesting spice with big groups and also testing things like the Landsrad, which is the end game political system. Now, not all of these features are online.
Okay, so he's saying that all of this already exists in the game. So you can play the game start to finish with all of these features. So they don't have much to go. They're just polishing things, I assume.
Player feedback, player data on how they approach these things and whether they're really working and what we need to do to tweak them to be better.
That's what I love the most about betas. You give players an opportunity to break your game in so many different ways you didn't even think are possible.
Absolutely. I like they managed to do it on one server where they could log in and not move. And it was amazing because it was like we didn't even believe this could happen. And here it is. Everybody frozen in place, just silently looking at each other, talking in chat, but unable to actually move their characters. So, you know, that's all part and parcel, it's part of the fun. But I do want to thank our beta testers for their patience, because I know we're testing your patience at the same time.
It's give and take, man.
It's give and take.
Now, with the beta being more persistent, or continuous rather, does that also mean that people who are not in the beta can expect to see some more in-game footage soon, some more glimpses of combat, for example?
Yeah, exactly. So as we move forward through the year, we're going to be showing more and more gameplay from the game. More of the combat system, which has been being revamped, melee, abilities, shooting, all of the things that people would expect to see. And in addition to that, we're also expanding the beta over time. So again, more and more people are getting in, and then they're in permanently, right? Because it's a persistent beta. So it will grow larger and larger and begin to pick up momentum as the year continues.
Joel, I would love to discuss a bit of a more technical aspect. Of course, Dune Awakening, it's a survival game, it's an MMO. Two different game types, which I'm sure on the back and front end have to be treated differently. How does the player experience those different aspects from a server infrastructure point of view?
Yeah, so a lot of survival games are either you have solo games like Subnautica, you have these like, you know, local server 8-player sort of Valheim style games.
All right, I'm
then
interested
you
in
have
this.
larger single server like Conan Exiles or Ark. You have large sort of players on a single map. And then with Dune, what we're trying to do is have these multiple maps where you can play with many, many hundreds of people, right? So you'll be playing with lots of other players, right? So it is a large world to explore and share with others.
Can I assume I am in a server with many, many people. Can I move between servers, or can I group up with people on different servers? Is that possible?
Yeah, so when players start to play Dune Awakening, they choose a world. And that world allows them to, you know, it's almost like choosing a server in an MMORPG.
All right, we're going to pause this and kind of look at it. So he said multiple maps. So Harko Village, I guess, will be a map. Arrakeen will be a map. Haga Basin will be a map, and the Deep Desert will be a map. And they'll all be kind of displayed on this, and maybe the ornithopters. There's little ornithopters here. Now remember me saying that there's going to be kind of hard to balance these ornithopters, but they're going to have to work them into the game somehow. Now these could act as sort of like transitional flight points between the zones. You might have to take ornithopters for that. So, like your flight points in World of Warcraft, but I don't think that these guys are going to go with that open world feel that World of Warcraft has. I think the Deep Desert's going to be a huge map, maybe even Conan sized, okay? But you're going to have the load screen of your ornithopter just flying around dunes to get there. You're not going to be able to run around on the in-between. Now hopefully these things should be relatively next to each other with some kind of ravine between them to where you can kind of see them from the other side, but maybe nobody's loaded on the actual area itself. And I'm assuming the Deep Desert is the PvP area. But I don't see how that's going to make sense, because you're going to have to be able to build in the PvP area in order to raid other people's bases. Unless they're not doing base raids and they're just going to... You'll build a separate thing that's a spice collector, and that's the thing that gets raided. We'll have to see.
RPG. But it's a large infrastructure of connected servers, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the idea is that as a player, you choose, you join, you start in a map, and from there your experience should be relatively seamless in terms of how you explore and feel the world. The difference between the reason we call it a survival MMO as opposed to just a survival game is that most survival games do one map, one server, but we have multiple connected servers running in a single world. So this is kind of where we come from, and it also allows us to have a lot more players in this structure.
So how many people am I playing with on like one server, or rather even, can I play with people from other servers? Can I group up with them? Can I be in a guild with them?
Absolutely, you can be in a guild with people across servers. There's no problem there. Within your world, you can join a guild with anybody, right? When you join the game, you start in a server which is a Haga Basin, right? We call it the Haga Basin. The Haga Basin is the starting server. It's a server with a minimum of 40 other players. It's a place where you can build, craft, survive, progress. If you want to play specifically with friends, you want to join the same version of Haga Basin, because Haga Basin can have multiple versions. And then from there, you move outwards.
I can select which Haga Basin I'm starting with. So like if we start in the game at the same time, I can make sure that we're spawning in the same.
Not only that, our server browser also tells you where your friends are playing.
Okay, perfect.
So it tells you exactly who's on which server, so which dimension and which areas, so you'll know.
Okay,
that's
so
going to be a little weird.
Areas, different servers, different maps.
So he kind of tells us.
Said servers. How do I traverse between maps?
So once you're ready to leave the Haga Basin, you craft yourself an ornithopter, for example, and you fly out into what's called the Overland map. And the Overland map is a server, again, running, that you can meet hundreds of other players on, and allows you to see all the locations in the world. So you physically fly between locations on the Overland map.
Now you said my homies can come and pick me up. If you're a good homie and you don't want to put me in a dangerous spot, where do you bring me early on? Where can I meet other people? Where can I meet up with my guildmates even?
Yeah, so once you've sort of explored the Haga Basin and you leave with your friends, you go out into what we call the Overland map. And in the Overland map, you have an overview of the entire world, and you can sort of see like the different maps that you have as an option. And one of those options are the social hubs, Harco Village and Arakeen, which are differently themed based on the different factions in the game, obviously, right? So you can go and visit Harco Village. It's a safe space. It's kept fairly okay, peaceful by the Canley Peace. And in there, there's bars to visit, vendors to visit. There's the Chome exchanges there, and of course you and your friends can go dancing if you want in the clubs.
Okay, did not expect that to be part of the game, but you gotta relax.
Well, these Europeans really like Harkonnens.
Now, once I'm done dancing and I slept off my probably hangover, I want to get out into the action. Where am I going?
So then you'll go back to the Overland map and you'll fly to the Deep Desert. The Deep Desert is this massive area. It's 500 kilometers squared. Or minimum 500 kilometers squared. It's actually a bit larger than that. There's and that's where you can meet hundreds of other players. There is probably going to obviously be a player cap if too many people go there, but you should be able to handle quite a lot of people. And that's a completely seamless set of servers that are all connected together. It's a generally a PvP map with a strip of PvE as people enter so that they can be safe when they come into the map and don't get ganked. And then you head out into the desert and you have these adventures where you're harvesting spice. The cool thing about the deep desert, and this is one of the things that I think I've mentioned last time, is kind of unique, is that we have this thing called the Coriolis Storm. And every week the Coriolis Storm wipes the deep desert and resets it with a new landscape and new points of interest. So it's an infinitely explorable space and a really cool place to hang with your friends.
I do love that. It really sounds like a very unique blend of different elements from different types of games that you combined here together. I'm super interested to see how that all plays out. Now, before we say goodbye to the viewers, any last thoughts you're having on the server infrastructure and your approach to it?
Sure, I think it's the important thing for me as a creative director to point out here is just we built this with the idea of making the game last and be expandable for a long time. So the idea of the overland map and being able to place new maps within the map allows us to just keep building on the world and giving players more content, more things to play, more spaces to explore. Like, who knows what it looks like 5 years from now, right? That for me is the main thing. And I think survival games have
and they most
struggled
likely
with this a
will
little
change
bit
it
because of the one server,
times.
one map paradigm that making the world feel seamless and connected has always been one of our goals on Dune Awakening.
So the future for Dune Awakening is very bright, is what I'm hearing. Joel, thank you so much for joining us once again. Before I let you go, though, is there anything the people watching should be aware of happening?
Sure. I mean, we've just been at Summer Games Fest, and anyone who's Dune-starved, wants some more information, should probably be out there hunting down articles, which I'm sure are spreading around the internet at this very moment. But of course, our next big beat coming up is Gamescom in August. And there we'll be showing the game live and allowing people to have a look at the future.
I'm going back to that overland map because I got something to say.
It was so great to have you back again here today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Always, always. And I'm super excited to see what you...
You know, it's almost like...
Okay, so another thing about this, you see how there's these 4 areas and there's these question mark areas. Now this kind of reminds me of the Conan Exiles situation. At first, you only had maybe 4 areas open, but there wasn't these question mark areas, and I do believe we're going to be in this area over here. I mean, we won't be in this area over here right away, obviously, but there will be more than likely more of these little question marks pop up. These are just unexplored, or he just didn't want to talk about those yet. Or this could be planned areas like what I'm talking about, but there are most likely they'll jam in more planned areas if the game does well, and there will be various versions of, I guess, wipeable, resettable PvP maps. Like this is a desert. Maybe we'll get like an inner Arrakis sort of cave system map or whatever. I could see that happening. Who knows what these are though. I think various faction hubs. So you're gonna need not just like the village, right? You're gonna need their capital areas. All we saw before was villages. So there's Harko Village, Haga Basin, and Arkeen. Maybe that's the capital city for the... I can't think of their name, but the Monarch people, the main characters associated with in the Dune movie. Anyways, they were just wrapping that up, and we'll go on to the next one.
Ooh. Tired of ads in games too?
Oh, we're tired of ads in general. But yes, in Conan they had the original area, and then they added a jungle, and then they added various dungeons after that. The jungle was the main thing. Oh, then the other maps, right? The island of Sipta and so on. Well, that's the one they officially added.
Hello and herzlich willkommen to Gamescom. I'm Zoe Schwind, and you can see today you're not joining me on Arrakis, but the next best thing, which is of course our Dune Awakening booth here at Gamescom in beautiful Cologne, Germany. Now it's been a very exciting week already with the gameplay reveal at opening night live, and of course all the streams showing the awesome presentations we had here on our show floor. Now with all that new content come a lot of new questions. So I am lucky that I will have a few minutes with Joel Byles later today to hopefully answer some of those questions. But first things first, let me show you around.
I'm kind of sad I missed this. I didn't have the money to go out to Germany.
And now Joel and I are in front of the theater. This is where the presentations are happening. There will be people queuing right there. A timer will show them when the next one starts. We lucky ones, Joel, get to skip the queue. But once inside, what can people expect? What kind of presentations are those?
I mean, we'll be showing 30 minutes of gameplay and discussing and talking about what the game is and yeah, giving people a real live performance of the game.
So there will be developers in there answering questions as well?
Yes.
All right, let's take a look at that. And this is it, the inside of the theater. This is where 63 people can be seated to watch a presentation. What's going to be in this presentation?
So we're going to, start with the player's first steps, character creation, of course, and then your first steps on Arrakis. Then we're going to show some building, we're going to show some world events that can occur, we're going to show the sandworm. We're going to end with going to a social hub and showing off one of the city areas of Arrakis, and we're going to show the spice hunt at the end of the game. That's kind of what's going to happen in the presentation.
And then afterwards, questions?
Afterwards, questions, and I kind of want this screen at home.
Honestly, same. Those sandworms look really impressive on a big screen, as we already knew, but It's fun to see it with the game involved as well. And for those of you who could make it to Gamescom, there is, of course, or was, of course, an opportunity to still catch all the action from this presentation from our streamer booth. We had streamers like Sacriel sitting down, showing the presentation, and chatting to their audience. Do you think we get in trouble if we push some buttons here?
I can probably push a couple. Okay. I'm also going to join a couple of the streams and hang out with the streamers.
Oh, sweet.
Talk a little bit about the game.
What's your game face? What's your streamer face?
Oh, I don't know.
I've
never really... maybe it's like this.
And at last, we're finding ourselves in probably the most exciting room of all, because in here, a few lucky ones get hands-on experience with your game.
Yes. Yeah, we're letting people play for about an hour at a time, and we'll be letting them, roam the world, try things out, and we'll be using a few cheats to let them jump forward in the game as well if they want to see things like flying an ornithopter, which is kind of cool. So yeah, giving people a chance to really get deep into the game.
So it does look like we're going to be able to see some gameplay. I believe the video after this does have some. This one does not.
Gamescom's been amazing. There's so many people, but it's been fun talking to people who either know about Dune or don't know about Dune and introducing them to our game, seeing so many familiar faces and new faces, and it's just been an incredible experience so far.
This doesn't come around very often for me as a developer, but so far so good. It's been going really great. It's been great to sort of get connections with people, get in front of people, put the game in front of people ideally, and they can get hands-on and start playing it and really give us some solid feedback.
We've been, or at least for myself, been on the project now for around 5 years. So, the chance to birth the project, I guess, to the people, it's just really great to kind of see and get their reaction of playing the game.
It's really nice, it's completely crazy. You can hear maybe already from the loudness, everybody has a blast of time and crazy.
Well, we can go back and go over the shoulder on those guys if we need to, but I think we'll see some better stuff.
Joel, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me for a quick chat.
Thank you for having me.
So before we're digging deeper into all the new things we've learned and seen about Dune Awakening, how does it feel for the first time to be able to show your game to the public?
I mean, it's really, really exciting. It's humbling to see what the public think. When you really get it in front of players, people who play the game, we've shown it to journalists and creators a few times, but this is really the first look for people who, just play games. Will they get into the gameplay? Will they like it? Are they seeing what we see, the promise of the game?
So you say the reaction of the players, have you just been creeping around the corners of the booth to watch them whilst they play?
You're watching people play, I'm the guy who stands behind you and kind of...
There will be a comment or two about that, I'm sure.
Coughs every time you
It's gonna play differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's left. Left.
You guys came not just, of course, with a game to showcase, but also a new tagline. It's Survive, Expand, Control. What's the tagline all about?
Survive, expand, control is really kind of the phases that the player goes through on their journey in Dune Awakening. And we've kind of always had this, like we will always use this internally to explain the player journey. In the beginning of the game, the player is really learning the mechanics of survival, the harshness of Arrakis, dealing with, the heat, learning to find water, avoiding that sandworm, and sort of making their way through the world. But then over time, they become more settled. They start to build a base. They start to expand outwards from their base. They build vehicles. They go out into the world and explore. They expand their operations. They expand their bases. They make them larger. Maybe they move to a better part of the map that they prefer. And then eventually, once you've sort of seen what the world has to offer, you start vying for control over the spice. So you want to start, forming a guild, perhaps signing up with one of the factions, and of course, trying to control the production of spice on Arrakis.
So it's like a bit of a checklist for the player, essentially.
Exactly.
Like these 3 steps and then profit.
These 3 steps, 300 hours later, and you're the king of the world.
Easy. It's so simple.
Only 300 hours,
with, Survive. We've talked about survival on Arrakis plenty of times before. We, covered worms, war, all the good stuff. We haven't really talked about the sun that much. Can you maybe elaborate on how people can withstand it? Like, what can you do against the sun on Arrakis?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the most obvious thing is travel by night. And the second most obvious thing is stick to the shadows, right? So obviously the game has a full dynamic day-night cycle, and as the sun moves through the sky, the shadows change position in the world, and you want to try and stick to where they are and do your activities in the shade.
I do have something to say about this. Nighttime in a funcom game is not World of Warcraft nighttime. It is... you need light, or you cannot see. They showed the guy moving around, scanning some stuff in the night. That's not how the game's going to be, I guarantee it. I think they just did that so it shows well. When you have nighttime, you will not be able to see anything. Unless you have like a really good monitor. You want to play on a projector? Good luck. You want to play on an old monitor? Good luck. You want to play on a laptop? That's going to be impossible to see anything at nighttime, unfortunately. So they do a good job of making the darkness work for you in that respect. As far as PvP is concerned, other players cannot see where you are. Even if they have the nice computer, it's going to be really hard for them. You duck behind a rock or something, they're not going to see you. There might be some nameplating that gets involved, but typically the nameplates are really good about disappearing unless you're right on top of the player.
Now that isn't always possible, so you start to craft yourself gear like steel suits, which allow you to, resist more heat, and of course preserve water. And you start to craft yourself like steel tents, which allow you to have portable shelter in the world.
All right, so those still suits and the still tents, is that something I can craft myself?
Yes, so especially later on in the game, part of the journey that you go on as a player is you go through these trials of Akul, which are kind of a Fremen ritual. And at the end of those rituals, you learn recipes that the Fremen have prepared for their own survival in the desert. And you as a player can then start to craft those items that you picked up, yeah.
Can I, for example, also build buildings and use their shade to hide behind? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, sick. Yes. That's actually really cool.
It's actually kind of fun. It's also like sometimes you'll be out harvesting, right?
Yeah.
And there'll be a rock that's casting a shadow and you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to crouch behind the rock before I shatter it so that I don't actually, get sunstroke.
Smart.
Cool.
So use the environment to your advantage, or create environment for your advantage.
And everything's kind of dynamic, so it's nice, yeah.
That's really, I mean, that's generally just so much joy because everything on Arrakis is so dynamic, like the sand, the movements, the imprints you leave whilst walking on that sand as well.
That stuff is interesting, and then there's like other layers to that where you can use like certain devices to blow away the sand because you're looking for buried treasure. Things that get deposited by sandstorms, they leave treasure in their wake that you can actually, find hidden beneath the sand. You need a scanner to find it, and then you can, dig up the treasure. It's kind of cool. Just things like that the technology allows us to do.
That's really cool. Such an interactive, open world to explore for all the players. Now, another thing we got to see more of during Gamescom is building and the process. We talked about blueprints a little bit, about the collaboration of building. I want to dig a little deeper into customization. How customizable are those buildings?
Well, I mean, so we have multiple different building sets, right? So the one that we've shown most of the time in these trailers is the CHOAM building set. CHOAM being kind of this organization that mass produces things in the world. And so you start with the basic building tiers. And then Over time, you can upgrade into more fancy versions, which have different visuals. And you have things like, if you join the factions, you get access to the Atreides, building set, the Harkonnen building sets. And these kind of allow you to visually customize how your base looks, right? And obviously Harkonnen is very H.R. Geiger, very dark. And the Atreides is more like fancy castle kind of stuff.
Can I mix and match?
Yes, you can combine those in any way you like to create some really weird hybrid combinations.
That can get very messy, can it? Okay.
It can look very weird.
But hey, that's all.
This does have its uses in PvP. The way your base looks can blend into certain environments. A good strategy is to make a replicatable thing that your clan members are familiar with building that helps you out in a utilitarian way. And kind of, it's a lot for how little supplies it is. Also, the building tiers he mentioned, the way it works in Conan, he said the first tier, so you're going to have like something that's easy to make. Maybe you can go gather some sand and some rocks, and you'll get the sandstone version of whatever it is. And then whenever you join your faction, it not only is it going to be different in appearance, which does help. Trust me, the appearance does make a difference. Certain appearances can hide certain things, and they can even do certain things. Even I'll press for example right now, but the newer tier, when you unlock that, will have more hit points. So when it gets hit by something like a weapon or whatever, it'll take more for it to break probably.
That's what customization is all about. You want people to be able to express themselves.
Exactly. Expression and customization is one of our pillars. So express yourself however you like, even if it turns out that your Harkonnen Atreides hybrid is an abomination to mankind.
Another thing which has been coming up a lot more during what we've seen here at Gamescom is the presence of spice. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. We've seen two different types now, flower sand as well as spice. How do you harvest that? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a part of the kind of mechanic of the game is drawing people out onto the sand where that sandworm is, making their lives a little more risky, a little more dangerous. Flower sand is this soft sand. It's mentioned in the books as a place where the Fremen like to pitch their tents because it's the softest place to sleep. It's kind of this very fine-grained sand you find on the most exotic of beaches.
Or Arrakis.
Yeah, or Arrakis in this case. It's very fine-grained sand. And in the game, you need it as a resource for crafting. So you can go out there, you can harvest this flower sand by hand. It takes a little while to harvest a lot of flower sand that way. Or you can use this really cool tool we have called the static compactor. And when you fire the static compactor at the ground, it kind of takes all the sand and lumps it together in this big pile for you to just harvest straight away.
That sounds like something that makes noise though.
Yeah, it does, right? And when you make a lot of noise on the sand, you start to attract the sandworm.
Okay. Sorry, we're getting double ads. You know, mine and yours. As long as you don't get a baking soda ad. Hopefully they're not doing that anymore.
So these are kind of the mechanics you use for harvesting flower sand. And then later on, when you get to spice, it works functionally, it's quite similar in that the big spice blows leave giant spice fields on the sand, and you kind of harvest in the same way. You can harvest by hand, you can harvest with a static compactor, and of course, you want to bring, to harvest the most, you want to bring a sand crawler, dump that on the surface and use it to suck up as much spice as possible. And naturally, all of these things take place on the open sand, and the sandworm always comes.
Is there an effect from being around the spice for too long whilst harvesting? Like, am I inhaling the spice? What is happening to me?
Yeah, so just by virtue of being on Arrakis, you're inhaling a lot more spice than you probably would if you didn't live on Arrakis.
Factual, yeah.
And we see that in the films as well. Happens in the books. And so yeah, as a player, if you stand around on a spice blow too long without proper protection, you start to inhale too much spice and it gets into your bloodstream, and that can lead to, let's say, certain effects on your character in the world and in the game. Yeah, the idea of these visions that Paul has, I think, is an interesting thing. We're definitely exploring this kind of idea in the game. What it is and what it means, I'll leave for the players and their imagination, and hopefully one day they'll find out.
Noted. Now that I harvested all that spice, though, what's the main usage for it other than the personal use? Like, why am I out there harvesting and, you know, I mean, risking my life for it, really?
Sure. I mean, in the books, the Fremen use spice for everything. It's something that became a huge part of their culture. And in the same way, the player also starts to sort of find multiple uses for spice all the time. You need spice residue for fueling some of the generators in the base. You start using spice to craft almost anything in the world, like some of the higher tier gear in the game really requires spice as a key ingredient. Use it to pay your taxes to the Emperor, because otherwise
I have to pay taxes in this game too.
This is how we claim a sub thief.
Can't escape it, man.
Can't escape those taxes. I mean, you can. You don't have to pay them, and then you get killed by the Sardaukar and try to fight. That's an option you have.
Okay.
And then of course, if you want to go into the Landsrad, spice is kind of the primary currency.
Okay, so what he said there is you have to pay taxes to the Emperor with the spice, and if you don't, you get killed by, I guess, enforcers. Okay, so these in Conan they used to have something called the Purge. There was a purple bar that filled up the more you did things in the game, and the more you did things in the game, the more you were kind of recognized as a force in the area, and then people would get together, whether it was creatures, zombies, skeletons, whatever, would get together and try and raid your base, and they would come in waves to try and destroy you. So it sounds like this is kind of the same mechanic that will happen eventually with how this is going to go on. So you'll build these bases, and then you can have NPCs that come and attack you. If you pay the spice, they won't come. And this could be beneficial because these bases will be in PvP areas a lot of the time, and if they come and attack you, that leaves you open more so than you would be otherwise to the other players to come and raid your stuff. Because really the NPCs aren't that much of a problem to an experienced player. You can kill them rather easily, but you're spread between attacking them and defending your base from another player, which would be a problem.
Of the kind of political infighting that's happening between the major houses, and you can take a large role in that. And of course you can sell it to make a lot of money.
So spice, it's everywhere.
Spice is the backbone of everything.
It really is. Another thing that we saw in regards to spice, or even like touched on in previous episodes, was abilities as well. Is there anything you can share about the connection between spice and abilities?
Yeah, so as the player's blood gets saturated with spice, you can imagine how abilities might be altered by being able to see just a little bit into the future. And so, you know, we have some of those effects in the game. I won't, again, spoil too much of it, but yeah, it will have an impact on your abilities.
Fine, I'll take that. That was an answer. We'll take it.
It's an answer. I can't go too far down that path.
Well, speaking of abilities, though, it was really, really exciting to see some new abilities showcased here at Gamescom. Shield was one of them. Can you maybe talk a little bit about adding new abilities, your philosophy when it comes to creating abilities and make them work in your world? Sure, we have, so first of all, we have our different archetypes, right? And we try to maintain our consistency with the lore of who those people should be. So if you are a Mentat or a Trooper, it's kind of like your basic set of abilities is kind of aligned around what that archetype would be using. So, Mentat, human computers, being able to see and calculate information really quickly in the world. But then, from a gameplay and fun perspective, we're trying to build a game that has combat that is about getting in close for melee combat and then pulling back quickly to go back to range. So you're always switching your tactics based on the enemies you're fighting. If they're wearing shields, then you need to get in there and attack them with melee. Ranged attacks just won't do the trick, right? So it's kind of really about this push and pull. And so our ability design is really about giving players options, whether that is about getting you to them as quickly as possible, that is things like the dash ability, getting you in really fast, or using a Shigawire Claw on the environment to pull yourself close to the enemy, but also giving you abilities like the Voice Compel, which allows you to pull the enemy and compel them with the voice to walk to you so that they can be struck down by your blade. So it's kind of about combining these things, and our ability design really takes this to heart. How do we get people in and out as quickly as possible? So with the traversal abilities, I can really kind of pair that with items and tech, right?
Yeah, so I mean, of course we have the suspensor belts, which basically at their lowest level allow you to fall without taking damage, but at their highest level allow you to fly basically freely without, you know, obviously power drains over time, but suspensor belts really allow you full mobility in the air.
I'm essentially the Baron at that point.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly, and that's the fantasy. And then you can combine
your fantasy
those.
is to be the Baron, so I need to stop you
I've been
right
working
there.
on it for years.
Okay.
But no, so the ability to like use suspensor belts to fly around, right, and then combining it with a sugar wire claw, using the momentum of both of them to pull you through the world, you know, twice as fast as you could normally move, or you know, using the dash into a suspensor belt, which allows you to like really go quickly in the world. It's kind of crazy and we might need to tone it down, but that sort of stuff is like, it's super interesting to see, and that's kind of what we mean by our combined arms. It's like playing around in the sandbox with the way that the combat, the abilities, all these kind of things come together to just make combat feel really dynamic and interesting.
There were a lot of interesting things, obviously, throughout the last few days here at Gamescom that were shown during, you know, the opening ceremony, and also the things we see here on the booth. Also, we got to get more sneak peeks into like the player hubs. So we got to see a sneak peek of an allegiance ceremony, for example, but that's something that you shared in the past, that people do not have to align with one of the houses. That's still true, right? I do not have to get involved in any of that.
It is true. You as a player do not have to join one of these factions in the game. You're not forced to join them. You
that's cool.
Play the game as a lone wolf, or like with your little clan or guild of people who don't want to be part of the major faction, but you'll always kind of end up interacting with them in some way, right? The Harkonnen and the Atreides are fighting this war of assassins over the planet's surface, and in some way your contracts and the way that you work in the world, you're always going to encounter them in some form, but you don't have to join them. You don't have to be one of them. You can maintain your independence. You can help people who are participating in the Landsrad, but you don't have to be aligned necessarily with either of those groups. Now, I mean, I do think it's a bit of a shame to miss out, because sometimes if you don't join, for example, the Atreides, you won't be able to get their best gear. You won't be able to get, you know, all of the building set, for example, that the Atreides has, and you'll definitely miss out on their cool "awoo" battle cry.
He worked it in.
But
shout out to Discord.
Shout out to Discord. But but you know, it's completely up to you as a player, and you will be able to buy things like Atreides outfits that other players craft and put on the.
Oh, the blueprints.
Yeah,
I can.
So yeah, the way that they handle their microtransaction shops, this company, is that you have to choose a side to get the building material. But if you do the microtransactions, they'll actually sell you the building material recipes without you having to join a side. So that's one of the ways they'll, and that kind of thing's okay with me. I mean, that puts some people off, but I would expect some kind of level of cash shop needness like that.
So I can still get my...
People can put things out for you to buy, yeah.
Okay, so the major drawback of not aligning with one of the houses would just be that I'm missing out on like specialized items in a way.
And I mean, I think some of the cooler political story stuff that we're putting into the game as well is like, it's interesting, but you don't have to do it. The main story is not tying you to one faction or another.
How locked in am I? Like, can I still play both sides in a way? Is there a drawback once I'm tying myself to Atreides? Then one day I wake up and I'm like, new day, new me. I don't want to be this anymore.
I'd like to go join the Baron.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
What happens then? Can I leave?
I mean, yeah, of course, it's Dune, right? Of course you can backstab people, and it's certainly an option.
Lovely.
So you can go down that way if you really want to get those rewards. Of course you can betray your solemn oath to the Red Duke. You can do that. I don't think he'll look kindly on you after that point, but you definitely have the option.
I had my reasons, I'm sure, or will have my reasons rather. Okay, so there's benefits and advantages and a few drawbacks there, whether or not I want to align or get involved politically. Got it. Now, last but certainly not least, I think one of, if not the biggest announcement was, of course, the release window. Early 2025 is when players can get a hand on the game all over the world. But before that, will players get an opportunity to play more in a beta? Will there be a bigger beta, a more open beta? What's the spiel?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're still doing our persistent beta that we started a few months ago. We're letting in more and more people over time, and we're going to start boosting it in a big way, adding lots of people to the beta in the coming months so that we can really test our server robustness, our scaling, and of course things like our end game systems, which we really need a lot of people to help us test out. So yeah, it's a great time. Hopefully people have already wishlisted the game and signed up on duneawakening.com, but if they haven't, still plenty of opportunities to get your hands on the game and make a decision about whether you like it or not before we launch it.
Absolutely. Well,
don't
Joel,
pre-purchase
thank you so much
this.
for taking the time. I'm going to release you back into the wild to look at what the players are playing outside right now.
Yeah, I'm going to go and be nervous and
Support
try
it
not
in
to
every
tell people how
way
to play my game.
other than pre-purchase.
And that's it from our very special episode of Dune Awakening here at Gamescom. As Joel just said, make sure to wishlist the game and, of course, follow us on social media for all the updates at Dune Awakening. And don't forget to also join our Discord server and join the conversation. It's been so much fun to be here and have a look around. And of course, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in once again. Next time, we'll be back on Arrakis, so we hope to see you there.
If you pre-purchase this game, the overall studio heads, the guys above these guys, will say, hey, we already made our money. Let's on to the next one, guys. Alright? That's what pre-purchasing does. Don't do that.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this first glimpse at the gameplay of Dune Awakening. I'm really excited to welcome you into our world, but I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, this is a beta. It's beta footage, so you'll see bugs and you'll see things that need polish still. And secondly, our tutorialization is still a work in progress.
I believe this is the gameplay.
With that said, let's get into it. The start of the game, Dune Awakening, begins off-world on this large spaceship.
Show yourself, child.
Oh, we'll do this. We want...
We're going to jump
right
ahead
there,
a little bit in the story here, skipping past several events just to sort of get into the early new player experience of the game. And you'll see that the player, after various shenanigans, wakes up here in a cave. And as we sort of look around the cave, we'll notice that it's filled with Fremen and the remnants of, you know, this ancient culture.
Filled with Fremen?
So now as the player takes their first steps in the world, they're really here amongst the dead. And so the first question they should be asking is, what happened here? Who are these people? And, you know, this is just a place where we give players a little bit of time to adjust their settings, get a feel for the movement keys, and then move forward into the cave. And they'll stumble upon their first major interaction point, which is the Frem Kit. The Frem Kit in our game serves as both a backpack for the player, of course, but also really a guide. The Fremen used to pack these with interesting objects that they could use to survive in the desert, and it's no different from the player. So here they begin their first crafting experience, crafting a small scrap knife out of metal that was in the Frem Kit. These caves have been moisture sealed in order to preserve the moisture of those within the cave, and so the player, as they explore, will be able to use their scrap metal knife to pierce the seals and escape. So really this entire area, built using Unreal Engine 5, is just to sort of get the player and ease them into the path. A lot of survival games have very abrupt...
So this is an upgrade from the Conan Exiles engine. I can see they used a lot of the skeletal animation. Like the guy running is the same Conan Exiles run animation. This is Unreal 5 though, so as we saw before, there's a suitcase what looked like on the desert floor, and it left a square mark in the sand when you picked it up. That's Unreal 5 stuff. That does not happen in Unreal 4. You play Conan Exiles, you won't see the sand being deformed in that way from just objects that sit on it. So that's the difference between the two engines mainly.
Very harsh beginnings, and we tried to, you know, make the experience of joining Dune Awakening just a little easier, just give people a little bit of a feel for the world before we really toss them out into the harshness that is the desert of Arrakis. So here we've crafted a heal kit, and we're going to use that to heal our character. And once we're healed, you'll see that our stamina bar in the bottom left appears. And now that we have stamina, we can climb. The climbing
This
system
is
in Dune
brightened up, I
Awakening is
guarantee it.
based in part on the one that we built for Conan Exiles. It's a free-form climbing system. It can be used to climb almost anywhere. And as you'll see later, the new technology available in Dune Awakening, such as suspensor belts, allows us to do even more interesting things with traversal.
Yeah, the climbing system, as he said, it's Conan Exiles climbing system. You'll be able to climb everybody's base. You climb right. You build a wall. You think you're building a wall around your base? No, people just climb right over it. Okay, and then you have then you have these belts. You can just fly over it. But I have a feeling that any damage taken on the belt will kind of give you some kind of debuff whenever you land. That's how it is in Conan Exiles. You're not necessarily debuffed, but you'll take extra fall damage.
So once we've finished that first little section, we're jumping ahead. We're going straight into the harsh real world of Arrakis. And here are your first steps on Arrakis. Your ornithopter has crashed, and you've got to escape from the crash site immediately, because the sandworm always comes. And what you have to keep in mind is, these are the little ones. So these are the first sandworms you encounter in the game. There's bigger ones later on. The other thing that you have to pay attention to as a player is sunstroke and heat. So if you see in the top middle of the UI here, we've got this sunstroke bar building up. The longer you stay in the sunlight, the more chance you have of getting into the sunstroke state. And of course, our player here,
hey,
not
public
the
agent,
knife in
I
the drawer,
removed your
has decided
message
to stay in the sun
because
and try
you
harvesting
seem like
water
a
from
bot.
plants. So he has become sunstroked. Sunstroke gives you a debuff. It means that your water goes down much faster than it normally would. That means you'll need to drink more often. So stick to the shadows, avoid the sun. It will eventually wear off if you stay in shade long enough. So now that we've made our way out of the first part of the desert and we're heading deeper in, we're going to start to harvest in the game world. So harvesting in a lot of these survival games is quite similar. In this case, we're picking up items, but we're about to pull out what's known as the cut array. And what we do with the cut array is we analyze structures to find their weak points, and then we cut along those lines to break open the structures and gain the resources inside. This is like mining. We apply it both to rocks, we apply it to metals in the game world. And at the start of the game as a player, you'll just be scrounging around, picking up, finding structural weak points in rocks that you can harvest, breaking them apart, and taking those pieces with you. Now we've jumped ahead a little bit, and we see that the player is starting to be affected by the spice in the air. And this means that players need to get somewhere safe, in shelter, before the spice overwhelms them and overwhelms their senses. And this is another large part of the game. We're not going to show too much of it today, but spice is a very important part. With the world broken apart by the War of Assassins, there are NPC bases scattered all over Arrakis. We're switching to a different character now, one who's slightly more advanced, and he's using his binoculars to mark an NPC outpost. We're going to mark that. That marker will then appear on our compass, and you're able to approach them in any way you like. In this case, our character uses a Shiga-wire claw combined with a suspensor belt to get up to high ground and approach the enemy base from above. Kind of one of the interesting things about Dune Awakening is just how you can combine the different abilities. And this is how traversal really plays into the game. Like, you end up being able to attack these bases from any angle that you'd like. Now, our player is going to craft the first gun in the game, known as a Mauler pistol, which translates to, the basic kind of weapon in the game. As you may know, in Dune, bullets are not the preferred type of ammunition. Instead, it's darts, which are fired at a slower rate in order to try and attempt to pierce shields. Now, this early in the game, enemies don't really have shields, so the player is going to sneak into the base from above and use a combination of their early abilities. In this case, dropping out a grenade, then sneaking around the corner, and beginning to get into NPCs head-on. Now, troopers are the basic shock troops of the universe, and their ability trees reflect that. Grenades, Shiga-wire claws for moving around, and of course, they're able to take down people with headshots. You can see how suspensor belts really allow you to change your approach to combat. Dune Awakening is at heart a third-person shooter with melee and abilities. And it's the combination of melee, abilities, and range shooting that
Yeah, it looks
creates
so
what we
fun.
call combined arms in the game.
We've been needing
Now
one
we've
of
taken
these
a fair bit of damage in this battle.
first-person shooter
so we're gonna
MMOs
stop
for
for
a
a second
while.
to heal ourselves up with a
That's
bandage.
actually got good base building in
Bandages
it.
heal over time, so you can't just heal yourself to 100%. You have
Don't
to
bring up
actually
that F word
get
either.
into
That's not
safety,
good
get
base
behind
building.
cover before you start using them. Now we're going to quickly switch to a slightly different character to show off more of the melee that we have in the game, because you're about to see that when a character gets in close, it's melee time. This character has Swordmaster abilities. First of all, the knee charge, which is about getting in close to do damage in combat, and then quickly setting up to a riposte, which allows you to parry and return massive amounts of damage to your enemy. Of course, later in the game, when enemies have shields, melee is a much more emphasized style of combat. And you see that when a player is not really equipped to handle ranged characters, they have to fall back on their abilities to get in close. Now, we've switched again. Now we're going to switch to a set of Mentat abilities. One of these abilities is known as Battlefield Calculation. Using Battlefield Calculation, the Mentat is able to calculate from anybody that they see what they're carrying and what they're wearing. Now we've dropped out our Hunter Seeker, and we're using our Hunter Seeker ability to take down enemies in the world really quickly.
You hear that?
Now obviously when you're playing with a friend, you want to combine your abilities and work together. In this case, the Mentat's able to point out to their friend where people are in the world and how much ammo and stuff they have. And you'll see that when enemies go down sometimes, they go into a down but not out state. It's up to you whether you execute them or continue to fight.
So what I'm seeing is just a Dune backdrop on a regular FPS game. This grenades work, the
After a
guns
quick
shoot
reload,
real fast.
back into the battle with our friend coming from above and throwing out one more grenade. And once you've defeated your enemies in battle, sometimes you just got to take their blood. In order to get water, the player's going to have to craft themselves this blood sack and this blood extractor and use it to harvest blood from their fallen enemies. Now, in our game, it's not always a good thing to just take blood from people. It's potentially bad and can only be used for certain things. Once you've extracted the blood, you can then of course drink it. As you'll see here, the player takes a big sip from their blood bag. But when they do that, it causes a debuff because the blood is not exactly pure, and drinking blood for water is not exactly a one-to-one scenario. So you'll see that our health bar got shorter while our water bar went up. And so being a blood drinker is not always looked upon in the right way. Of course, once you've played the game for a little while, you'll start wanting to build your own base. And the first part of that is placing down what we call a sub-fief console. A sub-fief console allows you to claim a small part of Arrakis as your own, but it does in turn mean that you'll start to owe taxes to the Emperor. So here we are with our building system, and you can see that we have two types of building here. We have the holograms, which show in the beginning. I call them Solido projections internally. And we have the way that you fill in, which is by holding down the mouse button in this case.
Yeah, we've seen this already.
So
this
the
guy
cool thing
built
about this
space.
is it allows us to have this cooperative building system.
And
So
the
you'll see
cooperative
that
building
one player
system's not new.
places
This
out
exists already in
the
Conan
Solido
Exiles.
projections, and the other player fills them in with the materials from their inventory. This is just a way that lets people play together and build together.
Oh, okay,
in
that
an
the
interesting
blueprints
and
is
exciting way.
new, but kind of unnecessary.
We've seen through our experience with Conan Exiles that some people just love to build in these games. So we've created a system called the Blueprint Building System that allows players to save a copy of their base as one of these giant holographics.
No, that's good.
Then they can take
I mean,
them
it's
out
good
into the world
for that
and
strategy
place
I
them out
mentioned
wherever
earlier.
they like, and then rebuild.
But again, not
And
necessary.
We have another system
Kind of takes a
in the
little
game
bit of the
which
fun
allows
out
you
too.
to take
That's
these,
just my opinion.
you know, big architectural designs of your buildings and sell them to other players on the exchange. And once again, this is a way to quickly move your base around the world. If you've got a design you like, you don't have to, you know, throw it out immediately. And it allows you to create these interesting masterpieces. It also, as you can see here, allows you to, you know, if you're not artistically minded and you don't like building big bases, you can buy them from other players. Once you finish crafting a base, you want to fill it with all kinds of machines, fabricators, and refineries. And of course, harkening back to the blood extraction we just did, we've got the blood purifier. So what we want to do is take the blood from our blood sac and deposit it into the blood purifier, and over time it will refine into lovely fresh water, which can then extract into our liter johns and carry with us out into the desert. While there's many varieties of fabricators that you can use to craft things in the game, one of the most exciting things is crafting yourself a vehicle. So we're opening the technology menu, and from here we're able to purchase the design for a sand bike. A sand bike is one of the early vehicles available to players in the game, and you can kit it out with different types of modules, including an extra seat which allows you to bring your friends with you. So in this menu you can see we're fabricating ourselves a sand bike, and all the different parts of the sand bike have to be fabricated individually. So the player is going into the menu here, they're crafting different things which will make up their sand bike, and as you can see it prints out in this kind of 3D printer type way where all the materials are turned into these particles which then come together to form the different pieces of the sand bike. And you can see it's sort of all happening in the background here, and if we go out into the world view you can actually see the pieces forming up inside the fabricator. So a base with lots of these fabricators going is actually pretty cool and pretty busy. Once we've done, we jump back in, we pull things out of the queue, chuck them into our inventory, and then we use the welding tool to place out vehicle pieces. Now again, this is a cooperative activity. We've thought about multiplayer, so any other player could be working with you to place modules and pieces of this bike. And so we're going to assemble this bike, but of course when you work on larger vehicles and your friends are with you, you'll be able to work together to craft big things like transport ornithopters or sand crawlers. And so we're going to add the body to this, and we're going to add an extra seat just in case we want to bring our friend with us out into the world. Once the bike's been assembled and fueled up, you jump on and you can head out to explore the greater areas of Arrakis. Heading out into the world to explore can be a dangerous experience. And as you explore the universe, you'll find certain dynamic events will occur. In this case, the War of Assassins has claimed a new victim, a ship which falls from the sky, spilling its loot all over the sand. So we head out there to see what we can get, to harvest and gather as much as we can. Of course, the problem is this is extremely visible to everybody in the nearby area. So people will be able to see this, and so in a PvP area you might suddenly find yourself coming into competition with other players. In a PvE area,
you just run out naked,
you might just
pick
find
everything
other
up,
people
and get out
competing with
real
you
quick.
to get to the loot first. And of course, at night time, there are different kinds of threats. Because while the heat of the day is dangerous, at night, the Sardaukar patrol this area of the desert with huge spotlights, searching for players. Now this player is over here, harvesting dew with a dew reaper, sucking the water off the surface of these plants. And they've been captured and seen by the Sardaukar. And the Sardaukar send down troops who come floating down out of the sky to attack and destroy the players.
Okay, so this is what, I think this comes after you if you don't pay your taxes too. So that ship will drop things on top of you in your base, and they'll start destroying your base, I think.
Traveling on the surface at any time risks drawing a sandworm. But there are certain things which we've created to draw players out of their comfort zones. So in this case, there's a special type of sand here on the surface, known as flower sand. Flower sand, according to the books, is the softest kind of sand, and players can use it to refine it into a variety of different materials that they need for crafting. So you want to come out into the desert and you want to try and find flower sand, but you have to be wary and pay attention, because as you harvest, you risk drawing the attention of the sandworm. We've awoken the beast. The sandworm is coming. We spent too much time out here and it's coming to get us. Now you can see in the middle of the screen the indicator showing us that the sandworm is angry and it's coming after us. And our only option now is to get back to rocky ground or the sandworm's going to take us. I don't know how those guys survived that, but somehow they managed to get to the safety of the rock island.
That's pretty cool. It looks like a shark mouth coming out of the sand.
Once you've crafted your first ornithopter, you'll be able to take to the air and your entire perspective of the world shifts. From here, it'll make traversing the world a lot safer because you can avoid the sandworms. It'll also help you to go out into the larger world of Arrakis. Here we are in the overland map.
It does look like you
make
can
our way
use it
south
to traverse
until we
the
find
other areas
the place known as Harco
within the
Village.
map too.
Harco Village is the current seat of the Harkonnen, after their city, Carthag, was destroyed in a nuclear explosion during the War of Assassins. There's more details like that in the lore of the game for players to discover and explore. So we're going to land at Harco, and we're going to explore the social space. Once you arrive in Harco Village, you'll be able to meet up with other players, interact with them, trade, and create guilds. The game has a variety of social interaction mechanics, from emotes to grouping to a chat. Throughout Harco Village, you'll also interact with story characters, follow the main story. You'll be able to meet vendors who will sell you exotic items.
They let you live. That is interesting.
You'll be able to get a feel for how the factions are viewed in the world, and of course, you'll be able to swear allegiance to one of the major factions, the Harkonnen or the Atreides. Swear your guild's allegiance and begin to take part in the politics of the Imperium.
Yeah, so there's
Once
only
you've
two.
grouped
The
up with
Fremen
friends, you should
don't
go
get
out
a
into the world
faction.
and find desert Imperial testing stations. These are dungeon-like experiences, which you and your friends can work through together. So here we are landing our various ornithopters outside of one of the desert testing stations, and we're going to head in as a group. Now it's really important to prepare different skills and abilities. These areas tend to be more of a challenge, and it's great to work together to complement each other. So this is the skill tree. Here you can equip different types of abilities and techniques. We have 3 slots for abilities and 3 slots for techniques. And there are multiple different trees depending on the type of trainers that you've interacted with in the world. So our character here is going to equip a series of abilities that complements the rest of their group. In this case, Swordmaster techniques. Alright, so we're heading in, and of course you can use suspensor belts to traverse, as you'd expect. And we're going to explore this Imperial testing lab.
You've entered Desert Botanical.
Imagine that's the tank class.
163.
It's going to be the Swordmaster.
I'm Dr. Wen Omega.
You're definitely going to have a
Senior
shield on.
plant geneticist here at the station.
Testing stations have storylines as well as enemies to fight and loot to be found. So you really want to go in here and enjoy the experience. Playing through with friends, working together, using different weapons and trying out different techniques. Now this player has placed out a portable cover. It's a different ability to what we've seen before. And you see that the enemies here have shields. Using the flamethrower, it's easy to get through a shield because you can burn the air around them. Now, of course, our characters are a little higher level than they were in the start of this video, so you're able to see that, yeah, we can take people down a little more easily. And of course, when you get to the end of these areas, you find these really cool loot chests. And in these loot chests, you find specialized components that are used for crafting exotic weapons and items. The end game of Dune Awakening takes place in the deep desert.
Alright, good night, Shelfie.
Giant spice blows will happen, drawing players from all around to try and harvest the spice as quickly as possible. You want to get there first, and you want to try and take as much spice as you can before an enemy guild shows up to try and take it away from you. Now, of course, if you're clever, and you start to lose the battle, you might place out a thumper. And that limits the time in which people are able to take spice, because then the big worm is going to show up. I hope you've enjoyed this brief glimpse at the gameplay of Dune Awakening.
Can't you just destroy
We're really
somebody's
excited to have
base
you
with
join
that?
us when the game releases.
They're gonna have to do something where the build area is not where the big worm can be, only the
I think it's a
crawlers.
really exciting idea of a game. It's combining so many elements with such a well-known IP.
I'm excited to see what the landscape's gonna look like with tons of players running around and all the houses being built.
First couple hours now, it's been great. A lot of exploring, a lot of learning. So far, I love it. It's great. My favorite part about it is that it's just so unique.
My name's Joel Barlos. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Funcom and the Creative Director on Dune Awakening.
My name is Scott Jr. I am the executive producer for Dune Awakening.
I think players have given us a lot of feedback, especially since we've been running a beta for almost a year at this point. I think one of the most important things is just the quality of life that they notice. It really sucks to have to drag every item from your inventory into a chest. Can we have a quick deposit button? And then we've done that, right? Things like that, they really improve the game experience. As a game developer, sometimes you just become blind to these obvious, easy fixes.
The most important feedback we've gotten from our players is really on the onboarding and the accessibility of the game. We want to make sure that Dune Awakening is a approachable game, and while Arrakis is dangerous to be on, we want to make sure that we are focusing on improving the points so that we can get players to the enjoyable elements of the game.
During the playtest now, I've been talking with a lot of people. Generally, it's the world, the atmosphere, the vibe of the game that people really, they really vibe with it. We had a long discussion at dinner last night about the sandworm. I just think people really love that feeling of like being chased by this giant force of nature.
The aspect of the game that we've been really proud about, how Dune the game feels. This is the first time players have been able to live their life on Arrakis. In Dune Awakening, players are walking on Arrakis. They're crash landing. When we upgraded from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, the advanced lighting and the technology just made the world become so much more immersive. The art team has been able to, using help that we've gotten from Legendary with the assets there, we've created some very interesting desert environments that are different.
Advice for players on Dune? Easy. Rest in black shade, stay out of the sun, conserve your water, and preserve the integrity of your still suit. Look both ways before you cross the sand.
It is a unique survival experience. Going and exploring the various locations, meeting some of the popular characters, creating your own journey, whether it's, pairing with the Atreides, siding with Harkonnen, participating in that faction conflict that we have, or staying neutral, just focusing on surviving and thriving on Arrakis.
But after you've been playing the game for a while, you'll start to feel the effects of spice, and that will lead you to certain Fremen areas, which lead you to certain items that will make desert survival a much easier task. I really like the process of layering in story in a world. There are locations in the game that are called specific things. All of those names are tied to a piece of writing or lore that we've done in the background. It's not necessarily surface to the player in the game. But then in another part of the same area, you might find an item, and that item shares a name with a location. And the description on that item might describe what happened at that location for this item to be created. And it kind of creates this feeling that this world is lived in, that people have been here before, that there's more going on than just your story, that the world itself has a story.
For me personally, working on the project, to see the creativity that the design team has had to come up with a Dune-focused combat solution has been very insightful. We have a very unique approach to combat. It's not like anything really in any other games, where we've come up with some really neat mechanics to make ranged combat and melee combat with abilities and vehicles work in the Dune setting.
There's a lot of survival games coming out these days, and this one really brings a lot of new elements to that genre that I've never seen in there before.
Sand ones, of course, just the thrill of seeing them charge around and occasionally come up out the sand.
I think I got into it really quickly, and I think it's fairly straightforward and easy to learn.
I feel like we've only just kind of touched the surface of it, so I feel like as we get deeper into it, we'll really get to really see it.
One of my favorite things so far has actually been sitting at the porch in my house, just watching people get swallowed by the massive worm.
Honestly, for the first 4 or 5 hours that we've played so far, I've had a really decent impression.
Firstly, there is Dune. Some people know the IP well, and some don't.
So she just builds her house out where the worm is.
Some
I
have
guess
read
you
the
can
book
do that?
72 times. And so we have a challenge. Most survival games have this ability to lean into a player's sense of intuition, where we have to kind of find these survival loops and make them work and give them proper explanation in our lore.
You've got these flying vehicles, the different progression systems, an open class system where you kind of dip into all the classes. Opening cutscenes are really epic. How you end up on the planet, I think it's going to be really interesting for people. I think just seeing how it progresses in the later stages of the game. The early stages are very survival, which is right up my alley.
The first couple hours now, it's been great. A lot of exploring, a lot of learning. Actually, I like the night times the most, when you actually see the ships flying over, trying to find you, and you see the moon.
Just look at that big sandworm. It's been a highlight so far, I have to say. The visuals as well. It's such a beautiful game.
And the gameplay that I've experienced today, it looks really, really polished for being a beta version of the game.
When we get to meet up with other people and stuff, we get to play around. And right now, I think some of the boys are building a speed ramp to start doing some jumps with the bikes. Yeah.
Awaken.
I mean, it's always nerve-wracking when you sort of let people into the game. Pressing creators throwing out the game now for the first like 6 to 8 hours of the game. What I'm hoping to see is excitement, people seeing the potential of the game, getting to understand how much we've nailed the atmosphere of the universe.
Today we expect to get a really good feedback on the early game from our content creators, give them the opportunity to play Dune Awakening for the first time and really see what excites them and excites their audiences about the game.
And sort of being able to hopefully get eaten by at least one sandworm once.
Launching a game at funcom, you work on a product for 5+ years. Ultimately, it comes down to somebody pushing a button, launching the servers and releasing it on Steam or on Xbox or PlayStation. It's an exciting time, it's an incredibly stressful time, but there's nothing quite like seeing players experience what you've been working on for so long. It's always amazing seeing players come in, seeing how they're experiencing the game, how they're using the tools that you've created in unique ways that you could never expect, and really seeing the community interact and thrive.
There's a moment around launch. You've been working towards this vision, this project for, like 5 years. A month or two before launch, normally, you can change less and less, and then at some point you can change nothing, and that's it. That's the thing that's going out to the world. Because we know we're going to be a live game, we're going to make updates in the future, but you know that this is the first impression. There's a moment where you become a bit powerless to change things, but you also kind of go, okay, it's in their hands now. It becomes the players. And I think you have to be very careful with live games, not to evolve them beyond what the core player base really loves about them. That is kind of, I make this joke that no plan survives the first contact with the players. and it's really how it is. And then you get to find out what people really like about your game. And that's the part that I think is the most exciting.
I think it's just going to be science fiction Conan Exiles, which is going to be amazing. So if it's that, we're in good shape. I'm pretty confident that's how it's going to go.
There is another path for you.
Now here's the new trailers.
Awaken.
Okay, maybe not this one, but the next one is.
You begin as a nameless prisoner. Sculpt your appearance, choose your background, and then crash into the planet. You are abandoned and alone. Hunted by sandworms. Scorched by the unforgiving sun. Ravaged by sunstroke. Stick to the shade. Chase the moving shadows. Survive. Welcome to Arrakis, the most dangerous planet in the universe. Meet hundreds of other players in the vast online world. Befriend or betray those you meet. Form a wary alliance, in this case, a spit dart rifle and a still suit, for your help taking down territorial deserters. Working with others will always increase your chance of staying alive. The Deserter Base. Climb to a vantage point and prepare for violence. Your choice of weapons and abilities determines your strategy. Swordmasters lead the charge into battle, literally. Repel ranged attacks with a shield, and then take them out, one by one. Deploy the Hunter-Seeker and kill from the shadows. Take what you can from the Fallen. On Arrakis, nothing of value.
I think the
is wasted.
Mentats use the Hunter-Seekers, it looks like.
Mine, harvest, and gather with your group to build bases and unlock more advanced equipment, like the Blood Purifier. Refine the blood you collected from your enemies to extract drinkable water. Craft improved equipment using fabricators. Replicate your bases in new locations with the blueprint system, and then sell blueprints of your architectural wonders to other players. Lead your group to become a guild. On Arrakis, a nameless prisoner can rise. Construct an ornithopter and take to the air. The world is yours to claim.
This is Dune Man Keith Filari reminding you to vary your route. Return with the full spice lord. My crew found a shortcut we become comfortable.
The in-game radio provides insight into key events happening across Arrakis. Map the desert. Discover landmarks, wrecked ships, and desert testing stations filled with forgotten technology. Arrakis is a vast planet. You can explore unique locations, uncover valuable resources, and search for secrets amongst the shifting dunes. And then, return to civilization triumphant with what you've found. Harko village throngs with people, spice traders, guild bankers, smugglers, house envoys, and of course, other players. Here, you will pledge allegiance to one of the great houses of Dune, the Harkonnen.
Now, you don't have to do that.
But remember, to play politics, you need power.
You'd go Atreides.
And on Arrakis, spice is power. In the deep desert beyond the shield wall, hundreds of players scour the landscape, hunting for spice. Every spice blow has the potential to become a heated battle, with multiple guilds vying for the precious melange. Even when it looks like defeat is inevitable, those who understand desert power can awaken Arrakis itself.
Well, alright, so this is I believe the release trailer coming up. We'll show the release date at the end of it.
This world. But those who do awaken. The desert wants you dead, off-worlder. If the sands don't take you, the storms will swallow you whole. But you don't have to walk this path alone. In every danger, there is opportunity. The foundation of something greater. A power waiting to be harnessed. Desert power. Some claim to rule this planet. But Arrakis is yours to explore. To fight for. To conquer. But there are forces beyond even your control. master Arrakis, and it will open your mind. This is your path to awakening.
That looked like a player base in the end there, so get an idea of what you could probably build. And the survival aspect of this, let me get back to that date. Did it show it already? No way. That's got to be right there. Okay, I'm going to pause it on that screen and talk a little bit. So the survival aspect of it is going to be, it might be amped up compared to Conan Exiles, because in Conan Exiles, you only had to really survive until you got to level, I don't know, 15 or so, and then you had everything you could have needed to be wherever. You had your little cabana built with the, with your little coconut milk, drinking, making eggs out of all the kappa offspring and all that, and it just didn't become a problem. But it seems like with the sun aspect of this game, you're never going to get away with that, unless you're in an ornithopter, and then when you're outside of the ornithopter, you might have the same problem. So let's go ahead and fire up the game. So let me log out here. I should have been doing this already. Just gotta log in. But yeah, May 25th, that is only a few days after my birthday. It's actually my father's birthday. I do believe anything in Unreal has to align pixels, not pixels, shaders. So you'll have a shader alignment screen. It's a little annoying, but maybe that's just because I'm on a 3060 right now. And I might benchmark it for that on stream here in a moment, as soon as I switch to that, which is up right now.
Peace I find is a future that never happened. One where I, Paul Atreides, was never born. I created the future until it created me. But I see a narrow way, a path that might have been. What if my mother had obeyed her orders?
So this is one of the earlier trailers, I believe.
Everything would
talking about
change.
the alternate timeline that exists.
Dr. Yue exposed before his betrayal. A world where my father lives. House Atreides surviving the Battle of Arrakeen. Sardaukar deployed to protect the spice melange. A war
Should
of
go ahead and skip that. Get to the shader compiling that you know is going to have to go on. So if you have a 3060, this is how it's going to go. Okay, so you can run benchmark, you can wishlist it, you got your settings here. You can run in window mode, which I'm running in. Motion blur, turn on and off. View distance. Various features here, hair quality. Just gonna kind of go down the list of everything you can kind of mess with. Your audio. User interface. Suppose you can choose. Yeah, you can choose all kinds of. Wait, did they not? Okay. Alright, we're good. Now, let's go back. I'm gonna create. I already created a character, that's why he's standing right there, but we're gonna go ahead and make another one.
Approach, prisoner. Show yourself, child.
Oops. I'm trying to resize my screen real quick. There we go. Now, you have all the various features here. You can... Yes, the chest size is a boob slider for the women. Skin tone. You can obviously choose your more Harkonnen look, if you would like. You don't have to choose it from a preset, but they tend to have this white pale skin, and you can make any character kind of look like that with this. Various sliders here. I am going to go with a preset myself. We'll just choose her for now. Face type. Now these are just base frames that you can then start messing with a bunch of the features on. Head details. You see you can mess with the jaw, the chin, cheekbones, all that. Eye color. Make it whatever you want. Nose details, nose sliders, all manner of them. It gets pretty detailed. Mouth would be the same way. Maybe not as many. Skin blemishes. You could get my acne situation going on at the moment. Hairstyle. Not as many hairstyles as I would have liked, especially for the men. The men and the women share the same hairstyle pool. Oh, cool. Huh. I didn't realize that one's like... Give me that one with a ponytail and I'll pick it. I didn't see it before. But anyways. You can give them whatever. And then pick the color of it later. You could do body tattoos, looks like face tattoos. There's a couple options there. Tattoo age, you can make it faded. Scars, scar depth. Eyes. Alright, so let's say I wanted to finish this character. We'll go ahead and finish. Well, I guess I could do makeup, can't I? No. Oh, that is the makeup. That's what it is selected there. Alright, if I wanted to pick any of that. I guess that's the shininess of her lip gloss. Lipstick metallic. I have to pick a color, probably. Let's go with white. Or can I not pick that color? Gray? Maybe that'll be better. Oh, no style was selected. Yeah, it looks crazy. What's a normal color look like? Alright. Finish character. Accept this character? Yes.
Have they told you what I am?
Reverend Mother.
Then I will sift your words for lies. Let's begin.
This is also part of the character creation process.
Where were
so before it was just your visual appearance. Now you're actually choosing your starting traits and your backstory. Look at that water garden stuff in the background. That's really cool. So you can choose Gidi Prime, which I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's the Harkonnen area, and then you'll have Harkonnen dialogue options, sort of deception, and the Harkonnen curse. which is a unique emote. Maybe that's just like pulling the wire out of your neck that then causes your jugular to bleed uncontrollably until you die or something. That might be what that is. Might be extraordinarily useful if they do make it utilitarian, if it does end up killing you, and none of the other players get an ability to kill themselves with an emote or anything. So they might have to burn a grenade throwing it at their feet to kill themselves. And you could be naked somewhere just after you drop off supplies, pull a thing out of your neck, respawn across the map, go do it again. There's all kinds of PvP tricks, right? Maybe this is one of them. I don't know for sure. Okay, so you could be a Chasuk. From Chasuk, this is a rich and verdant, arid world of rolling hills and river-fed valleys. The music planet is the center of culture and civility in the Imperium. So it's the Empire's center. Okay, the agreed-upon capital of the Empire. Well, maybe not the capital, but I guess it's important to their culture. You'll get a dialogue trait cultured, so you can talk about various wines, I guess. And musicians pose for an emote. Caladan, now this is, I believe, the capital center of the Atreides, where the other one was the Harkonnen. You'll get the honorable dialogue trait, so you can choose honorable options, and then you can get the salute for them. The Ketien, I'm not sure how to say this. This is a green and pleasant world with satellite-controlled weather. The fates of many are decided within the ornate halls of the Imperial planet. So, okay, maybe this is the Empire capital. Dialogue trait political, so you can do political options, and you can have an elegant bow. And Ix. This is a forbidden ice world of mountain tundra and forest. The Ixians conceal their vast technological empire within the sprawling underground cities. Dialogue trait technologist. You might understand computers better. Although if you're a Mentat and you study Mentat, you should be able to do the same thing. But in the Dune world, it's highly frowned upon to have actual computers. That's why the Mentats exist. So that's why this is a forbidden world, because these guys, they're still using actual computers. In the Dune world, a giant war was fought with like a Skynet type deal went on. The humans did barely win at great cost and catastrophe. So they swore off computers altogether. These guys are breaking those rules, and so the ancient technologies still exist on Dune, because Dune was around for a long time, and some of these vaults have been sealed off by the shifting sands, and that's what gets uncovered for the dungeons, I imagine. So these guys will probably be... they might have some abilities once they're in these vaults. So that might be something to do.
The machine world. They skirt dangerously close to breaking the prescriptions of the Butlerian Jihad. The Order of the Imperium is rooted in the Farfaluches. A place for every man, and every man in his place. Where is your place?
So you get to choose your social status here. You could be a Pion, which is like... it's like a slave, it seems like. You're a peasant. Or you can be a noble, or you can be a bondsman, and I guess a bondsman is just like the working class, right? I could have that a little bit wrong for the bondsman, but that seems like the role they're maybe filling here as far as your social status. Maybe we'll pick nobility?
Did you give bad advice? Or make a bad deal? To be close to power is to walk the knife's edge. You had a mentor in your youth, trained by one of the schools. Who was your mentor?
Okay, now you get to choose your starting class. Now, I've always said I'm going to be a Bene Gesserit whenever I do that, so I'm definitely picking this one, but you'll start with the voice compel, so you can sort of make somebody like, oh, forget what they're hiding behind cover or something, forget that they're doing it, and kind of walk towards you, and you can mess them up. Swordmaster, you're going to get the deflection, enter a defensive stance to deflect dart attacks. Mentat, you'll get the Sentinel. Deploy a suspensor buoyed dart projector that uses motion detection to cover a field of fire. So it's like a defense turret, essentially. Trooper, you get that cable that lets you move around mobile. It makes you fast. You're a fast damage dealing character, I believe, if you're a trooper. So Mentat, you're kind of like an area denial. Bene Gesserit, you're probably like that's hard to nail down exactly. Bene Gesserit's just a different form of DPS, I imagine. And then Swordmaster is going to be a tank. Alright, so we're going to go Bene Gesserit.
Yes, I have heard of our sisters giving training outside of the chapter house. It is frowned upon. The test is almost complete. Have you spoken truth?
So I've spoken truth already. And I believe it just progresses and it goes into the next section or cutscene. If you say you wish to recant, you can go back to character creation.
Where were you born?
Okay, so we go here.
The Order of the Imperium is rooted
and then
in
nobility,
the...
next.
You had a mentor.
Right, so you could choose these things over
trained
again.
by one of the schools. Yes, I have heard. The test is almost
Alright, I've spoken
come
truth.
here. Kneel. Put your hand in the box.
Ron Solo! Hey, glad you could join us, buddy. We're just wrapping up our Dune stream. We got a little bit more to go, don't worry.
I hold at your neck the Gom Jabbar, the high-handed enemy. Don't pull away or you will die. Great plots are afoot in the Imperium.
This is why they
and
don't
the
respect
currents
Harkonnens.
of intrigue run deeply. Arrakis is the key, and the Fremen are missing.
They all pulled their hand out of the box.
You will go to Arrakis as our agent, prisoner. You have one task. Find the Fremen. Wake the sleeper. Everything depends on this. Do you understand?
Yeah, I'm streaming to both platforms. So I said, yes, I understand.
Good.
There's some mark on my cheek. I guess you can kind of
see.
see.
There is only one rule. Keep your hand in the box and live. Withdraw it and die. An animal would gnaw off its own hand to escape the pain. And we can only be served by humans. Find the Fremen. Wake the sleeper. You will know when it is done.
Confirm character. I guess well, I don't want to. I just kind of quickly made it, sure. And then you'll get this exclusive in-game reward when you first start. If you downloaded and made a character, and then you type in this code, you'll get a starting in-game item that's just slightly better than I guess what they start you out with, anyways. All right. See if I can delete these. Oh no, it just overwrites my character. That's fine. I can make a different one later. But alright, if you've enjoyed the stream and you're going to play yourself some Dune, you might want to follow me because I'm going to play the heck out of it and I will know some of the strategies probably well before many other people. And we'll talk about those. Some of the building might work the same as Conan Exiles, so we'll talk about that as well. We'll do all kinds of. We'll be a whole Dune series after that. We're still going to do our regular thing with the Pixel games, and that. But this will be our mainstream tune once it releases. So that's a few months out still. But follow on Rumble, subscribe on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one.